Chapter 941, Huiao paying respect I. As Li Chenghui let his mind wander, Li Zhuliuo stepped forward, cupped his fist in salute, and began introducing the siblings. The eldest among them, Li Zhufeng and Li Zhaoyang of the first lineage, were timid and hesitant to speak, so the fourth young master took it upon himself to speak on their behalf. Next was Li Zhaoqin of the second lineage. The current generation of the second lineage lacked innate ability. Though born of the first lineage, he had been adopted into the second, and was in fact the blood brother of Li Zhufeng and the others. He bowed respectfully when he was called upon. The remaining children were all quite young, barely out of infancy, so it was hard to judge anything. After greeting each in turn, Li Qingliao turned to inspect the outstanding disciples of the 16 prefectures. There were more than 30 in total. Naturally, the standards for selection were a notch below those for his own kin. As he surveyed them, none seemed foolish, but most were lacking in cultivation. 7 from the Ren family, 2 from the Chen family, 3 from Western Pool, 10 from the prominent families, and 10 from the commoner clans. Li Qingliao had a clear sense of things. The prominent families of Lijiang, such as Chen, Tian, Du, and Su, were facing circumstances not unlike those of the Li family's main lineage. All suffered from dwindling legitimate descendants, so their numbers were understandably low. In contrast, the newly risen surnames and humble households from the western and eastern banks of the prefectural mountains were rapidly amassing strength and securing their footing. Li Qingliao studied this night after night, sitting atop the island with his red brush in hand. There were few who could claim deeper insight than him. The era of intermarriage among the Chen, Du, Tian, and Su families of Lijiang is coming to an end. Government appointments flow like water in the 16 prefectures. The mortal and immortal realms grow ever more distant. There are prominent families with names but no land. Their rise and fall is a matter of a single generation, thought Li Qingliao. He nodded as the youth below reported the customs of Wudu Prefecture, smiling in response, though his thoughts were elsewhere. The current peace and stability across the 16 prefectures was not truly his achievement. He knew full well he had simply inherited a stable, finely tuned Li family ripe for manipulation. The system of rotating appointments and prefectural authority, the Jade Court, the Qingdu enforcers, these had all been carefully devised by Li Yuanping and Li Zijun. Even when the Li family had only held a sliver of the eastern shore, they already had a vision in place. Over time, Li Zicheng and Li Zijun had systematically eliminated the local powers in the newly claimed territories, and now that framework spanned the entire expanse of the lake's 16 prefectures. However, he still remembered the sacrifices made by the 4 surnames alongside the Li family in the north. The current decline of the prominent families was not unrelated to the deaths of their political leaders. In the past, rewards like spirit items and dharma artifacts had been part of the bond, but affection and familiarity mattered just as much. Thus, Li Qingliao gave special attention to the descendants of the 4 surnames, distributed spirit items to the outstanding youths of the 16 prefectures, and allocated cave dwellings on the island for them to settle and cultivate. The cultivators then took their leave. By the time he had completed all the arrangements, more than half an hour had passed. When he turned to check on his own family's children, he found them all still standing silently to the side. They had been waiting all this time without a word. Li Qingliao set down his brush and smiled. "Zhuliuo, bring your brothers up here." Li Zhuliuo responded respectfully. As he and the others approached the front of the hall, they noticed a sudden warmth in Li Qingliao's expression. He quickly rose to his feet, vacating the seat of honor, and greeted solemnly, "Greetings, my lady." Li Zhuliuo turned to look and saw a woman already standing in the hall. She wore a long feathered robe and silver boots. Her black hair was coiled up and pinned back with a white flower. She held a silver-white spear as she stood quietly. A violet haze shimmered in her almond-shaped eyes. Though lightning did not manifest over her body, just her presence alone made Li Zhuliuo afraid to look directly at her. He of course knew exactly who she was. Ancestor Qingheng. Li Qingheng gave him a slight nod and asked, "How long has it been?" "My lady, it's been 1 year and 6 months, Li Qingliao responded on his behalf. Li Qingheng hadn't spent all her time in seclusion over the past year or so. She often went out to the sea to collect lightning. Now her control over the 6-fold profound thunder punishment tokens had grown increasingly refined. She could store lightning within them at will and even enhance their power. The white flower hairpin she wore was also found in the Eastern Sea. Though it was only of Qi cultivation realm, it was a rare celestial thunder dharma artifact capable of storing a small amount of lightning. It was better than nothing. "The appointed time with Zai Ziking is drawing near. I came back to take a look," said Li Qingheng. Since she was standing, no one dared to sit. They followed Li Qinghang down the steps of the hall. She glanced at the scenery across the island and quietly praised Li Qinglao. Li Qinglao respectfully said, "Senior Kong Tingyun from Profound Peak Gate paid a visit a year ago. Upon hearing that you were in seclusion, she did not disturb you but left a message with me. She hopes you would write to her upon emerging so that she may come to visit. I'll go to Profound Peak and see her instead," Li Qinghang responded softly, without any noticeable change in expression. Li Qinglao had managed household affairs well. At the very least, the island already bore the marks of an immortal family. As she took in the scenery, evening descended, and sure enough, silver-white lightning bolts began to strike the island. Zai Ziking held a jade slip in his hand, his silver robe gleaming. He cupped his fists and greeted her with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Qinghang, long time no see." Li Qinghang nodded gently and exchanged a few polite words with him. Zai Ziking didn't waste time and handed over the cultivation technique in his hand, speaking aloud, "Have a look, fellow Taoist. This is the bright and clear heart." Li Qinghang swept her spiritual sense through it. As Zai Ziking had claimed, the technique wasn't particularly valuable. It was merely a second-grade technique called the Clarity of Sight and Heart technique. She only inspected it briefly before raising her head with a look of doubt. Zai Ziking, of course, understood the value was insufficient and immediately said, "I know this isn't quite enough, but I have something else to make up the difference. Perhaps it will balance the value." He pulled out a jade box from within his sleeve and said softly, "This is an escape spell of Bright Yang Dao, a third-grade technique called Flowing Sun Refraction. Together with the previous one, the value should match that of the Dao of Thunder Steering and Cloud Dwelling." Li Qinghang hesitated slightly. Escape spells were rare in Jiangnan. As for the Dao of Thunder Steering and Cloud Dwelling, she didn't fully understand its value. From the Li family's perspective, the Purple Thunder Secret Origin technique was just an ordinary third-grade technique. It was certainly not worth a third-grade escape spell. If she were to think maliciously, he might be trying to obtain the technique to counter her. But Li Qinghang had long switched to cultivating the Cloud Thunder Inquiry technique. While her immortal foundation remained the same, many of her internal pathways were now entirely different. After much thought, she decided caution was still best and spoke gently. "The Purple Thunder Secret Origin technique is, after all, my own method and contains many secrets. If you're willing, let's exchange the jade slips first. After we return from the Eastern Sea, we can trade the unlocking incantations." She looked carefully at the young man's expression and saw clarity in his eyes. He answered without hesitation, "Deal." He readily agreed, showing the decisiveness typical of thunder cultivators from the Northern Sea. After a few more words, he took his leave without a hint of reluctance, riding the wind as he departed. Li Qinghang watched him go and said softly, "While we're away, be extra cautious in your actions." Li Qinglao bowed his head in acknowledgement, while Li Qinghang thought to herself, Mingwang should be nearing a breakthrough. I'll make a trip to Profound Peak Gate and then swing by the Eastern Sea. I'll borrow some spirit gauze from Hengzhu Dao Gate and bring him back first. No matter how much trouble it caused, Li Qinghang didn't mind. If possible, she was even considering asking Kong Tingyun to come along, just in case something went wrong along the way. Chapter 942, Huiao Paying Respect II, Zongquan Island. In the Eastern Sea, where waters fall and thunder rises, the skies were perpetually overcast. Rarely did the thunderclouds part, but today, radiant light poured down, gleaming brightly across the towers and halls of the island. Whenever a heavenly breach occurred in the Northern Sea, the waters of the Eastern Sea would fall, expanding Zongquan Island by 50 kilometers. Its territory would suddenly grow, revealing numerous spirit ores. The island's income would improve dramatically and show signs of burgeoning wealth. However, on a barren mountain within the island stood a small courtyard, with no guards or servants. There was only a lone monk washing clothes in the courtyard. Halfway through, he looked up at the sky and muttered, 2 years, how quickly it passed. King Heng looked a little pale. He finished washing his robe, wrung out the water, gave it a good shake, and hung it to dry on the line. Outside the courtyard, seabirds chirped noisily, waiting for him to light a fire and cook. But after changing into clean clothes, his senses stirred. He rose into the air and rode the wind straight into the clouds. Sure enough, the waters were roaring thunderously outside the protective formation. The Jadred Sea surged with deep rumblings. Woo! A faint conch horn echoed from afar, growing nearer. Fish and shrimp leaped across the sea under the brightening sky. Bluish-green backs breached the surface, and countless enormous beasts seemed to be stirring beneath the waves. The sea looked as if it were boiling. One by one, demonic creatures rose from the depths and halted midair. Some held sabers and the others held spears or halberds. The armored and robed creatures were lined up in symmetrical formations on either side of a path, glaring with bulging fish eyes. King Heng began softly reciting scripture as he calmly watched the sea. The ocean gradually parted, and a massive blue-scaled beast with a horse's face and an oxen's body rose from the depths. Boom! Water crashed down on either side like a waterfall as the beast stopped near the shore. Its body was as large as a small mountain, and its eyes were the size of huts. It stared silently at King Heng with dark blue-black pupils. The monk was no larger than a single scale. Most of the island was cast into shadow by the sea beast's form. The monk King Heng fidgeted nervously with his prayer beads, raising his bronze monk staff, which clinked softly in his grip. Fellow Taoist, a dense swarm of shrimp and crabs prostrated themselves at the feet of the beast. Several water snakes stood upright like men, sounding conch shells with eerie rhythms. The cultivators on the shore were enveloped in the beast's shadow, struck speechless by awe and dread. Ding-dang. At last, King Heng lifted his brows and noticed bronze chains trailing from the beast's body deep into the sea. A green-scaled fish leapt up from below. The green fish rode the waves forward. It had a pair of scaled wings beneath its ribs and bulging eyes. When it reached the shore, it transformed into human form. It was dressed in a black-green robe, laughing heartily as it spoke. "Master Monk King Heng, it's been a long time." King Heng's calm expression finally cracked. He clutched his monk staff tightly, then exhaled deeply and shook his head as he replied, You fellow Taoist Huiyao, why all this pomp and spectacle?" Huiyao chuckled sheepishly and said in a low voice, "Please don't take offense, Master Monk. I was ordered to patrol the sea, so the grand display was somewhat unavoidable. I ask your pardon." King Heng frowned slightly and asked, "May I ask what orders you're carrying out?" The green-scaled fish, now in robes and appearing rather dignified, waved his hand with a grin and said, "To offer congratulations." King Heng paused, lifted his head in thought, and saw the sky above clearing of clouds and fog. A great wind surged, heat rippled through the air, and heavenly light blazed with intensity. "The air has broken through," thought King Heng. Huiyao's fish-like face glistened with mucus as he laughed heartily and said, "This humble sea general offers congratulations to your esteemed family on behalf of the Dragon Son." King Heng finally let out a breath of relief and nodded. Only a monk like him, with a calm temper, could settle the matter with a few chants. Had it been another Foundation Establishment realm cultivator, being startled like this would surely have earned Huiyao a few angry rebukes. When Zhennan's Serpent Dragon Palace had changed hands, Huiyao had gathered his own cultivators to help slay a demonic creature. Word had it that he had since fared well under the new lord. King Heng assumed that thanks to that assistance, Huiyao had risen in rank, and now his presence at sea carried considerable weight. The two waited for 15 minutes. The plants on the ground began to wither slightly, and clouds of yellow mist swirled into the sky, each as large as a cartwheel. King Heng narrowed his eyes and saw silhouettes moving in the clouds, with the faint cries of warhorses echoing within. Huiyao stared fixedly at the sky. After a few more moments, the celestial phenomena vanished completely, and only then did he descend before the hall. The monk stepped forward. Bright light burst from the windows and doors of the hall like a blade of white, illuminating both man and demon's faces in dazzling radiance. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Heavenly light flooded the hall, surging toward the upper seat. Huiyao followed closely and looked up. A deep golden halberd was planted upside down in the center of the hall. Its shaft curved like a crescent moon, with a bright white arc etched at its center. A brilliant light flowed like water from it. The demonic creature stared blankly as the scent of flowers brushed his nose. His gaze moved past the halberd and finally landed on a young man seated at the head of the hall. The youth wore golden white soft armor, adorned with black profound patterns. His sleeves were tightly fastened, and he was half leaned against the chair's back. He slowly raised his head and revealed a sharp jawline. His slightly narrow eyes were calmly open. Huiyao had once seen Li Yunjiao and felt this youth shared a resemblance, though he appeared more refined. But his eyebrows were longer, his eyes slightly wider, and he exuded an indescribable presence. He does not look like a man, but rather like a dragon transformed into human form. That sly and cunning glint between his brows, it's just like Li Yunjiao, or perhaps even more intense, thought Huiyao. Huiyao once knew nothing of the cunning and wickedness of humans until he met Li Yunjiao. Only then did he understand that such traits were common in mankind, yet never since had he seen anyone like him, until now. As these thoughts flickered through his mind, Li Xiaowei slowly raised his long brows. His dark golden eyes focused, and Huiyao felt a chill sweep through his body. His heart trembled slightly as he thought, He must have cultivated some kind of eye technique meant to intimidate. This must be the Li family heir, the one the dragon son said was the least human. Yes, it must be him. And besides, there are no other bright yang cultivators present. He felt the youth's gaze shining like sunlight and stinging his face. He couldn't help but lower his head. He copied human etiquette with a cupped fist salute and said loudly, "Huiyao, patrol general of the Zhenan Serpent Dragon Palace, greets the heir." The youth at the top seat rose to his feet. His black boots clicked against the floor with a few crisp echoes. His voice was clear and carried a hint of a smile as it echoed through the hall. "You are too courteous, fellow Taoist." But Huiyao remained bowed, swinging his robe and stepping forward with one leg. Using the grand salutation of the dragon kin, he knelt down with a thud, bowed toward the east, pressing his forehead to the floor. He then turned and bowed to the air. His voice was respectful and slightly high-pitched as he said, "This humble demon, blessed by the dragon's decree, bows again and again. I speak on behalf of the resplendent Dragon King and the Crown Prince of the White Dragon ancestry, the Dragon Son, Lord of the Scarlet Pristine Sea, commander of the Zhenan Shrimp and Crab regiments." His tone was exceedingly respectful and drawn out, his green-black robe sweeping the floor as he chanted, "To humbly invite the heir's immortal presence to grace our Serpent Dragon Palace." Chapter 943, Dingjiao I. The Dragon Son extends his invitation. King Heng immediately looked up. Li Xiaowei was staring thoughtfully at Huiyao, who was still kneeling on the ground. The monk suddenly felt a pang of regret. Huiyao's really picked up some tricks over the years. He's grown cunning. King Heng wasn't ignorant of worldly scheming, but as a monk of Buddhist teachings, he could not allow himself to judge others with suspicion. It was only now that realization struck. This whole grand display had been the Serpent Dragon Palace's invitation banquet. Huiyao had intentionally used a congratulatory excuse to brush him off, fearing the monk might refuse the invitation on the heir's behalf. The old demon's a fast learner. After decades of practice, he's mastered the act, thought King Heng. Now that the meeting had happened in person and Huiyao had bowed to invite the heir, turning down the invitation would be a direct insult to the Dragon's Son. And with the dragon's power in full bloom, there were likely few in the Eastern Sea who would dare to do such a thing. As the monk pondered, Li Xiaowei descended from the platform. With a crisp clang, the crescent-bladed halberd vanished into a storage pouch. He stepped in front of Huiyao and spoke softly, "Please rise, fellow Taoist." Huiyao's heart gave a sudden jolt as he heard Li Xiaowei pass by and stepped toward the edge of the main hall. The heir smiled faintly as he said, "How could I possibly disobey the invitation of the Dragon's Son?" Relieved, Huiyao got up and turned to King Heng, speaking in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, I ask you to open the formation." As King Heng began casting spells and forming seals, the invisible barrier in the sky faded away. Huiyao removed a large orange-red conch from his waist, pressed it to his lips, puffed up his cheeks, and blew. A thunderous sound echoed at once. Woo-woo. The shoreline waters surged skyward as two massive walls of seawater rose on the ocean surface, joining together and rolling over the many pavilions of the island until it reached the entrance of the main hall. Whoosh! A salty mist swept in with the tide. King Heng watched from afar, thinking bitterly that his freshly washed clothes had gone to waste. Jade-red water steps formed beneath Li Xiaowei's feet. Huiyao made a gesture of invitation, and Li Xiaowei stepped forward. The water beneath him receded and flowed directly onto the sea beast. Chains rattled furiously as the sea beast strained mightily to pull. Each of its scales vibrated with a hum, and whirlpools erupted across the sea. Slowly, a palace was dragged forth from the depths. Its walls were built from coral, adorned with pearls and jade, and water cascaded from its ledges like waterfalls. It was vibrant, dazzling, and magnificently ornate. What a splendid palace, thought Li Xiaowei. This was merely the Dragon's Son's vehicle, yet its palace halls far outnumbered the buildings of Zonquan Island. Huiyao led him in as night-illuminating pearls lit up on either side. He pointed to the great hall on the right and said respectfully, "The main hall is reserved for the Dragon's Son's personal use. Please proceed to the hall on the right." Li Xiaowei glanced around. There was another palace to the left that was only slightly less grand than the main hall. It was likely meant to host Purple Mansion realm guests. He followed Huiyao into the right hall, who explained, "Please wait a while, my lord. I'll be steering the bicolor scaled beast. Our journey leads to the Zhenan Serpent Dragon Palace beneath the Eastern Sea, just above the Netherworld. Though this beast is skilled in traversing water, it will still take 3 to 5 days." Li Xiaowei nodded silently, and Huiyao withdrew in a hurry. Two pure and charming clam maidens entered from a side chamber. Night-illuminating pearls lit up one by one, illuminating the various coral ornaments in the hall, and they brewed tea for him. Li Xiaowei reached out to accept a cup and saw that it was clear jade-colored spirit tea. Huiyao really does know our family well. At least he didn't serve any kind of blood food, thought Li Xiaowei. He set the cup casually on the table and looked up at the coral throne in the center. The armrests on either side were made of hooked serpent heads, their eyes tightly shut, with delicate white scales. These were likely esteemed ones among the hooked serpent clan. They are nothing more than decorations before dragon kin. Li Xiaowei took a seat nearby and quietly observed. This sea beast, after all, was the dragon sun steed, and it moved with such smoothness that there was no sense of traveling through the seabed. After some contemplation, he raised his estimation of the dragon sun's status once again. After all, dragon kin rarely produce offspring. Once they reach adulthood, they are already at the Purple Mansion realm, and the most noble of all demonic creatures in the world. Li Xiaowei knew of two dragon monarchs. One was Beijia Dragon Monarch, and the other was Xiang Dragon Monarch. The former ruled over converging waters, and was a true scion of the ancient true hornless dragon. He was likely among the oldest beings alive. Of the 9 sons of the true hornless dragon and the 6 converging 3 pristine, only 2 still roam the world. Xiang Dragon Monarch is the rising star. So apart from the Lord of Converging Waters, there is yet another Dragon Monarch. This makes 3 true monarch-level beings in total. This dragon son is also titled Crown Prince of the White Dragon ancestry. Among everyone the Li family knew, perhaps only the young sword immortal Wang Zun could compare to the dragon son. That young master from the Chuoba family was far behind. Li Xiaowei had taken 3 years to break through to Foundation Establishment realm, moving at a steady pace. His radiant origin pass had coalesced within him, and his mana had shone like radiant light. Using the 5th grade technique Radiant Essence Scripture, his immortal foundation was the most magnificent one ever forged in the history of the Li family. Though Li Ziming also cultivated the Radiant Essence Scripture, he had already reached the Foundation Establishment realm when he acquired it, so he could never match Xiaowei's pure and proper attainment. In addition to seizing celestial light, capturing flames, and warding off evil and disaster, the Radiant Origin Pass can manifest physically to subdue enemies. This immortal foundation also holds strong affinity with separating fire, and can condense radiant flame into armor and troops as servants. Even the same immortal foundation could produce slight variations depending on who cultivated it. Li Xiaowei wasn't sure whether the marvels he manifested came from the Radiant Essence Scripture or from his own unique nature. He muttered, "These 2 minor marvels. The first has its uses. The second not so much." Though he had yet to use them, he estimated that these armored troops would, at best, reach the level of the Qi cultivation realm. They would be of little practical use, most of the time in battles between Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. As for spells and techniques, Li Xiaowei had spent over 20 years cultivating, with most of that time dedicated to studying spell arts that were mostly of 2nd or 3rd grade. He'd heard that those arts would undergo some transformations after reaching the Foundation Establishment realm. But at present, they merely felt easier to cast. The grades are simply too low to be useful in real combat, except for 2. When facing enemies, the only techniques he truly relied on were the grand-veined golden eyes and the armor cycle soul-refining halberd art. The former was a perception art, and the latter was a halberd combat art. Both kinds of spell arts had unexpectedly evolved after he reached Foundation Establishment realm. The grand-veined golden eyes had become even more wondrous. It had gone beyond its original ability to see through illusions and falsehoods, and now emitted an aura of intimidation. When activated, anyone without a corresponding spell art or immortal foundation would instinctively feel overwhelmed and panicked, as though they couldn't possibly win. As for the armor cycle soul-refining halberd art, it was a demonic Dao halberd method, forged through enemy slaughter. Now, even the radiant armored troops he summoned could use it to empower him further. It seems the cultivation method must be compatible. Only then will the breakthrough to Foundation Establishment realm bring meaningful transformations. Otherwise, it's just smoother casting at best. Since this palace was, after all, another's vessel, it was far from safe for cultivation, especially since it was filled with the aura of converging water. Li Xiaowei simply sat at the main seat. The clam maidens nearby, seeing he hadn't touched the tea, stood silently with the jade teapot, not daring to look at him. Chapter 944, Dingjiao II. 3 days passed in a flash. When the bicolor-scaled beast halted, the great palace on its back slowly sank beneath the sea. Enchanted by mana, it settled gently onto the deep blue seabed, leaving the surrounding rocks and silt completely undisturbed. Li Xiaowei pushed open the palace doors and stepped out into a world of deep azure. Above him, the sea loomed pitch black. Gemstones and pearls glowed like lanterns, lighting the seawater in an eerie yet vivid blue. The ground was made of dark crimson reefs. The seabed of the Eastern Sea was not a place ordinary cultivators, or even most Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, could access. Li Xiaowei had never heard it described before. Now, using the faint light and activating his grand-veined golden eyes, he looked far into the distance and saw nothing but endless, sprawling palaces. Huiyao was standing on the palace steps ahead, smiling obsequiously and following two demonic creatures closely, doing his utmost to please them. One had bulging cheeks and black armor, with a mouth full of fangs. The other had a bulging belly, a massive mouth, and long whiskers. Both wore clothes resembling human garments and approached carrying tridents. The black-armored, thick-cheeked demon general spoke in a gruff voice. "This is the tail subkingdom of the Zhenan Serpent Dragon Palace. Honored guest, please follow me." Huiyao was bowing so low he was nearly kissing the floor. He clearly had no standing to speak. Li Xiaowei nodded calmly and followed behind. The middle-aged demon with the huge mouth and long whiskers spoke first, his tone gentle and soft. "The tail subkingdom is the Clam Kingdom. Though its population thrives, the citizens live beneath the sand. The queen recently became pregnant with a pearl, so she is unable to come out and greet you. We beg your pardon for this." "It's no bother," replied Li Xiaowei, glancing around curiously. The space was truly vast. Since the common folk lived beneath the sand, these palaces were likely meant for the shrimp and crab soldiers. He thought to himself, how vast the Eastern Sea must be. If every corner harbors a demon kingdom, wouldn't it rival several inland territories? No wonder the dragon clans are content beneath the waves. It's far more comfortable than living ashore. They traveled at great speed for several hundred kilometers. In the distance, he gradually made out a dark stone wall within the waters. It seemed to reach all the way to the heavens and stretched endlessly in both directions. The middle-aged man with the massive mouth and long whiskers spoke in a low voice. "Honored guest, you've cultivated an eye technique. Be sure not to look at the wall." The golden glow faded from Li Xiaowei's eyes. When he looked again with mortal vision, he saw only darkness, though faint glimmers of cold light hinted at several long pillars. A thought stirred in Li Xiaowei's mind as he asked softly, "Oh, and what's the story behind it?" The demon general with bulging cheeks and dark armor finally spoke, his voice low and rough. "The 8th young master is up there." The youth paused slightly, then immediately understood. He lowered his gaze, fixing it on the dark red reef beneath his feet. The two demon generals buried their heads into their shoulders and fell silent. Who could be so universally referred to by sea demons as the 8th young master? Only the dragon monarch of the pristine water Dao, the very origin of the scarlet pristine sea's hue, the 8th son of the true hornless dragon. The Li family had records of this sea once being called Quinee 2,000 years ago. It was renamed when the 8th son of the converging water true hornless dragon was captured here. The dragon clan had chained him to the depths of a sea cliff, forging 9 cold iron pillars to pin him down. They had slaughtered and dismembered him, turning the sea green overnight, and thus the scarlet pristine sea was born, slaughtered and dismembered. No matter how many corpses remain, this place is the burial site of a true monarch, a son of the true hornless dragon. He knew that he carried talisman seeds within him and wouldn't be instantly killed just by looking, but he restrained his curiosity and walked on with a lowered gaze. The long-whiskered demon beside him whispered, "The pristine and converging Daos generate and transform each other. Cultivating here yields great benefits. You likely don't know, but many cultivators once friendly with our dragon clan dwell in caves above." Li Xiaowei gave a slight nod and followed them into the cliff. A vast open space appeared ahead, and high above hung a great plaque, Zhenan Serpent Dragon Palace. He stepped inside to find a palace bathed in clear blue. The eerie mix of red and green was gone. The structure was built primarily of crystal, with fish and shrimp winding their way through rich, concentrated spiritual energy. The two demons led him up the winding path through the palace until they stopped beside a grand hall overlooking the entire Serpent Dragon Palace. The massive-mouthed demon said, "Please, this way." Li Xiaowei stepped forward, opened the jade-like palace doors, and saw several women in pink robes singing with raised sleeves. There was a single figure sitting at the head of the hall. He wore a silver robe embroidered with waves and dragons. His face was as refined as sculpted jade, with thick brows running into his temples and a tall, noble brow. 2 silvery markings trailed from his temples upward to his pair of white horns. His black hair cascaded down, and his pupils shone pale blue. He fixed his gaze on Li Xiaowei, raised a brow slightly, and said nothing. Just then, someone to the side stood up and looked at Li Xiaowei. She hopped barefoot down from the platform, her movements leaving the gentle sound of bells in their wake. She landed before him with a cheerful smile and said, "Greetings, fellow Taoist." It was a young girl who was no more than 12 or 13. She had a clean and bright face. Tiny red feathers grew from the corners of her eyes, which were dark red and full of warmth. When she reached him, she gave a perfectly proper bow. Li Xiaowei returned the gesture, golden light flickering in his eyes once again. He turned to the white-horned youth seated at the head of the hall and said in a steady voice, "Minghuang of Moongaze Lake greets the dragon son." The youth glanced at him. Seeing that he did not kneel, he rotated the cup in his hand and said softly, "Dingjiao, white serpent dragon of clear sea and still pond lineage." His bearing was refined and unpretentious. Without any air of arrogance, he gestured to a seat beside him for Li Xiaowei. A maidservant brought over wine. The white serpent dragon glanced at the girl beside him and said softly, "Minghuang, this is fellow Taoist Wupian from Qingwu Forest in northern Yan." The red-feathered girl kept smiling and nodded. "Chongli lineage, Wuping Fireyang Luan." Wupian greets fellow Taoist. Li Xiaowei understood at once. He thought to himself, a white serpent dragon and a Fireyang Luan, neither of them are ordinary demonic creatures. This Luan looked quiet and refined, but she was quite talkative. She immediately spoke again with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Minghuang, are you the eldest son, or the second?" Li Xiaowei found the question rather out of the blue. He gave her a friendly smile, but before he could answer, the white serpent dragon Dingjiao spoke first, raising his cup toward him, golden eyes of that shade, likely the eldest. Li Xiaowei seemed thoughtful, but showed no sign of discomfort. He raised his cup in return and replied, "Your guess is correct. Good, very good." The Luan girl Wupian let out a relieved sigh and said with a smile, "Then things will go smoothly. The white Kilin may be fierce, but he can be a friend. That white cicada, on the other hand, is no good." Wupian. Dingjiao interrupted her and turned to Li Xiaowei with a hearty laugh. "Minghuang, you may not know this, but Emperor Gong of Wei in his youth was a golden-eyed white Kilin with scales beneath his neck. My grandfather and him were close friends. My father even met him once and would call him uncle, so there was such a connection." Li Xiaowei was slightly surprised, but thinking further, it wasn't odd as the Wei's Li regime had once unified the north with unmatched prestige. Having ties to the dragon clans was only natural. Still, judging by the current state of affairs, he had never heard of any deep alliance between the dragons and the Wei's Li family. His own family certainly hadn't received any real aid. It was likely nothing more than superficial friendship. "May I ask, which dragon king is your honored elder?" asked Li Xiaowei. Dingjiao's pale blue eyes shifted slightly. He gave a faint smile and emphasized each word. "Dongfeng Yu, Chapter 945, A Dragon's Request I. My father is the Dragon King of Bei Si, a son of Dongfeng Yu," said Dingjiao. Dongfeng Yu. Li Xiaowei had deliberately studied before coming to the Eastern Sea, so naturally he recognized the name. Dongfeng Yu was a dragon king who had reached the peak of the Purple Mansion realm, but had perished while attempting a Golden Core realm breakthrough. His fall gave rise to the phenomenon known as falling water rising storm. Now that he had achieved the Foundation Establishment realm and had a photographic memory, the details swiftly came back to him. Huiao once mentioned that the original master of the Zhenan Serpent Dragon Palace was Dingyuan the Dragon Son. After Dongfeng Yu failed to ascend, Dingyuan lost his backing and was stripped of his position. He was sent back to the converging water sea, so he showed a trace of admiration and offered a compliment before asking, "May I ask, Dingyuan the Dragon Son is?" "Oh." Dingjiao took a sip of spirit wine as a girl in pink robes tapped lightly on his back. He tilted his white horns and raised his brows with a smile, saying, "He's my second brother. He was punished and sent back to Xia Mountain. I had no choice but to return from the northern sea to guard this place in his stead." Hearing him say, "had no choice," Li Xiaowei deduced that Dingjiao and Dingyuan were likely aligned. They were both grandsons of Dongfeng Yu. Losing control of the palace may have been punishment for Dingyuan, but for a crown prince like Dingjiao, being stationed here likely wasn't much better. He set down the pale green jade cup and said softly, "A pity." Dingjiao let his gaze wander lazily over the dancing girls below and said softly, "Minghuang, I invited you here for two reasons. First, our elders once shared ties, so we may as well renew them. Second, there's something I'd like to inquire about." He turned the cup slowly in his hand and asked gently, "I've heard your esteemed family once had some connection with the demon den of Mount Dali. Is that true?" Li Xiaowei wasn't clear on the relationship between the dragon clans and the fox tribe of Mount Dali. He paused briefly, then answered calmly. Our ancestors did have a friendship with a direct descendant fox demon from Mount Dali, but as generations passed, the connection has gradually faded. Good. Dingjiao's gaze remained on the women in the hall, his pale blue eyes shifting slightly beneath his high brow as he replied, I ask that you seek out a fox of Mount Dali on my behalf. If possible, I'd like to meet with one. If this matter succeeds, I will see to it that you are rewarded. Li Xiaowei hesitated for a moment. His family's only connection to Mount Dali's demon den was through the white banyan fox, which was really just a bond through Li Tangya. Though the Li family still sent spirit patties into the mountains each year, and the white banyan fox continued accepting them, they rarely met anymore. After all, friendship fades with distance, as they say. Sensing no hostility in Dingjiao's tone toward Mount Dali, he didn't agree right away but replied, If it's convenient, might you share the reason? I wouldn't presume to ask the foxes on the Dragon Son's behalf without cause. Just call me Dingjiao. Dingjiao corrected him with precise formality, then added softly, You're one of our kind, Mingwang, so I don't mind telling you. I need the hearing technique of the Mount Dali foxes to listen in on a certain trench in the sea. But we dragonkin cannot enter the mainland, and ordinary demons cannot even find the foxes. I see. Although Dingjiao looked entirely forthright, Li Xiaowei couldn't tell how much of it was true. It was best left to the foxes of Mount Dali to judge, so he nodded and said, Very well, I'll deliver the message on your behalf, brother Dingjiao. Haha, Dingjiao chuckled, and music began to play in the hall. The Dragon Son pulled the pink-robed girl into his arms and began fondling her as he spoke casually, Brother Mingwang, since you're a white Qilin, surely your offspring must be abundant. Of all the dynasties under the heavens, only the Wei lineage prospered so greatly. Do you know any techniques you could teach me? Li Xiaowei stiffened at once. Lustfulness was a trait often associated with dragons, and this white serpent dragon was no exception. The moment business was concluded, his first question was about bedroom arts. Li Xiaowei responded with a smile, Most of my family's heritage has been lost, and such techniques are even rarer. It's hardly of any use nowadays. He had deflected but had already gleaned much from Dingjiao's tone, thinking inwardly, this white serpent dragon has never truly regarded me as a human. Though he invited the heir of the Li family, he sees me only as a white Qilin in human form. Otherwise. With such noble blood, why would he be so courteous? Dingjiao didn't press further. He laughed for a while, then used the topic to share a few amusing anecdotes about past Wei emperors before nodding. If Brother Mingwang ever comes across a bright yang spirit item that promotes fertility, I hope you'll think of me. We dragonkin may lack in many things, but spirit items and dharma artifacts. We have plenty, we'll make sure you're satisfied. The red-feathered girl Wupian covered her mouth and giggled, casting a glance at Li Xiaowei as she spoke in a gentle tone, I'm not as well-behaved as Brother Dingjiao. If I ever fly over Jiangnan and stop to rest at Moongaze Marsh, I hope Brother Mingwang won't drive me away. Li Xiaowei was, after all, a born spiritual variant. Most of the night passed as the three chatted and joked. They grew much more familiar with each other over time. Dingjiao gave Li Xiaowei a long, measuring look, then turned and called the giant-mouthed, long-whiskered man over with a sharp tone, Go fetch my dry yang bangles. The whiskered man hurried off and soon returned carrying a jade box. Dingjiao slapped the box onto the table with a loud thud and flipped open the lid, revealing two bright, gleaming golden bangles. He smiled and said, Brother Xiaowei, these are bright yang treasures. They'll be yours if you get this mattered. Li Xiaowei raised an eyebrow slightly and glanced at the box. The two gold bangles were somewhat thick. It was not the sort of dharma artifact meant for binding others. Rather, they seemed meant to be worn on the wrists. What sort of mystique they held remained to be seen. Dingjiao exerted a bit of force, lifting the two golden bangles without a word and handing them to him. Li Xiaowei felt a warm sensation as he took them. The bangles were light as walnuts. He spun them twice between two fingers, examined them thoroughly, and praised, These are indeed fine treasures. Dingjiao looked away, glancing at the Fire Luan Wupian. The two exchanged a glance, and Dingjiao thought to himself, he can lift the dry yang bangles. He truly is a genuine white Qilin. Though Dingjiao and Wupian had already suspected he was a white Qilin, they had to be certain to avoid any embarrassing mistakes. That was why he'd brought out the treasured bangles. Now confirmed, Dingjiao looked at him with even more warmth. Li Xiaowei glanced at the bangles again, then casually returned them to the jade box. Lifting his eyes, he said softly, Brother Dingjiao, there's no need for such courtesy. Whether this matter succeeds depends on Mount Dali. We've spoken freely as friends. No Dharma artifact is needed just to pass along a message. He pushed the jade box back, but Ding Jiao pressed his hand on top of it and looked up. The smile faded from his lips as he said quietly, "This is something that must be made clear." Li Xiaowei set down his cup and shook his head. He said, "If we're keeping accounts, then having the bicolor scaled beast carry me in a palace into the sea already settles the debt for delivering the message." Li Xiaowei had always been wary. Ding Jiao had caused quite a stir by bringing out his mount and escorting him across the sea in a palace. The spectacle alone had silenced any doubts. Earlier, Li Xiaowei had been worried about returning from the outer sea, but with such a display, no one would dare act until all the Purple Mansion realm cultivators got to the bottom of it. This was merely delivering a message. Ding Jiao hadn't even asked him to persuade anyone. Though Li Xiaowei knew he was unique, so were people like Su Xiao, Tu Longjian, and others of the Chengxiao lineage. At first, Ding Jiao's reasoning had seemed plausible. But the moment Li Xiaowei held the bright yang bangles, a sweep of his spiritual sense was all it took for him to recognize it, a Purple Mansion realm spirit artifact. No, an ancient one at that. Even cultivators of the Purple Mansion realm would fight to the death over this. No matter how wealthy the dragon kin were, how could they casually gift such a thing for a minor favor? His suspicions surged to the peak, so how could he dare accept it? His words were purely factual, but Ding Jiao paused at that, looking pensive. He said softly, "Very well." Chapter 946, A Dragon's Request, II. Ding Jiao stowed the jade box away and hesitated for a moment, seemingly distracted. He spoke less, and after another hour, Li Xiaowei rose to take his leave. The white-horned dragon son accompanied him out of the hall, his expression solemn as he said in a low tone, "This visit may have lacked in hospitality. Please don't hold it against me, Brother Mingwang." Li Xiaowei thought briefly, then shook his head and said, "Why say that, Brother Ding Jiao? Once I have news, I'll send it down through Huiyao." Two demonic creatures escorted him out. The white serpent dragon turned and re-entered the hall, frowning with a hint of regret as he said, "Wupian, I fear this white Qilin was sincere in wanting to befriend me. Yet I tried to win him over with a spirit artifact. His family has declined, so he's naturally cautious. I fear I acted poorly this time." The fire Luan also reigned in her smile. Ding Jiao sat down, sipped his wine, and soon relaxed, speaking softly. "Uncle Heian once mentioned the Li family. Coincidentally, the Tao of thunder steering and cloud dwelling has a Li Qinghang. Who's to say it wasn't a subtle nudge from him? If possible, it wouldn't hurt to befriend this white Qilin." Dongfeng Heian. Wupian shook her head with a smile, asking curiously, "What exactly is Dongfeng Heian's position in your family? I've heard he's temperamental and difficult, but also that he's gentle and cultured. Why such opposite impressions?" Heian. Ding Jiao organized his thoughts and shook his head. "His standing with the dragon monarch is quite high. Since he's connected to the birth of a true monarch, he possesses many exceptional and mysterious abilities. Still, we dragon sons can summon him at will." He added quietly, "My mother said, once the dragon monarch swallows thunder, Uncle Heian will reap unimaginable benefits. It's not just about attaining divine powers, so now is the time to strengthen ties with him." Li Qinghang flew eastward. She had just exited the Moongaze Lake territory and entered the riverside wilderness, when she suddenly noticed the sky turn a deep shade of purple. A cluster of drifting clouds had shifted into a pale violet hue, as the setting sun in the distance tinted the clouds gold above and purple below. They then floated across the crimson-violet sky. She rarely saw such a spectacle, and guessed that someone might have ascended to the Purple Mansion realm, or perhaps fallen from it. She decreased her altitude and swiftly flew through the wilderness, continuing to head east. The territory of Profound Peak Gate lay around Lake Xian. Li Qinghang arrived on Lightning and asked briefly at the formation's edge. When the disciple heard she was from the Moongaze Li family, he rushed into the sect to report her arrival. After only a short wait, a woman in a Riverland robe flew out on the wind, landed nearby, and anxiously checked on Li Qinghang. Seeing her in fair condition, she approached with some unease and whispered, "Sister Qinghang." "Sister Tingyun," Li Qinghang responded politely. Knowing this wasn't the place to talk, Kang Tingyun quickly led her through the formation and flew toward the main peak. Li Qinghang rarely visited the interior of Profound Peak Gate, let alone ventured this deep. As they ascended toward the main peak, she saw bizarrely shaped mountains on either side, each emanating distinct auras. Some had fire veins rising skyward, and others had lakes within a kilometer or two that had clearly been relocated here. She glanced around and noticed the sky above Profound Peak Gate was also awash of violet and crimson, with purple-gold clouds drifting slowly overhead. Li Qinghang murmured, judging by this celestial sign, has some Taoist master passed away. Kang Tingyun heard the calm in her tone and sighed in relief, then answered softly, "It was Taoist Master Zaipai of the Purple Smoke Gate. A few days ago, our sect's Taoist master went to witness her advancement. Judging from the sky, it's nearly certain she failed and perished." Taoist Master Zaipai. Li Qinghong certainly remembered that Taoist master. She had likely been the most powerful cultivator across both Jiangnan and Jiangbei ever since her breakthrough after Shangyuan. But now, after several years, she still failed to achieve the Golden Core realm like true monarch Shangyuan. Kang Tingyun hesitated briefly and then said softly, "My sect's elder once told me that this Taoist master nearly became Tao companions with Taoist master Donghua. But fate had other plans, and they eventually turned against one another." Though the Taoist master was most likely dead, Li Qinghong didn't dare comment further. Kang Tingyun, also reluctant to speak too much, casually changed the subject. "With Purple Smoke Gate weakened, there's no longer anyone in Yue State who clearly stands above the rest." Once they entered the cave dwelling, she spoke apologetically, "Qinghong, I had planned to help with the matter of the Radiant Sky Stone, but the situation changed so quickly, and the information I gave turned out wrong. I truly feel sorry." Li Qinghong hadn't blamed her at all. She shook her head and said, "You meant well, sister, I understand." Kang Tingyun gently shook her head and replied, "Some things are simply beyond my power. Still, both messages of the battle at the riverbank and the Radiant Sky Stone came from me, so I can't deny responsibility." She pointed to the stone table where 2 jade boxes rested and said softly, "I felt guilty, so I brought 2 spell arts. They can't make up for the matter with Zijun, but at least they show my sincerity." Li Qinghong initially refused and pushed them back, but Kang Tingyun quietly said, "If you refuse, it would mean you're holding a grudge." Li Qinghong had always gotten along well with her and knew she wasn't to blame. She finally nodded, and Kang Tingyun smiled, picked up 1 box, opened it, and introduced, "This is a 3rd-grade cultivation method, the Bright Origin Observation and Separation Technique. If fully cultivated, it forms the Everbright Platform Immortal Foundation." She took out the rather aged jade slip and said softly, "It comes from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven. Though hard to master, this immortal foundation can turn light into fire, transform into countless forms, entangle and bind, shield the user, or become a penstroke of light that stuns the spirit with fire." This technique isn't of high rank by today's standards, but its name was different in ancient times. In the main branch of the Wei's Li lineage, it was a higher-grade method known as Imperial Observation Origin. Imperial Observation Origin. Li Qinghong committed everything to memory and thought the ancient name sounded more fitting. After all, the Wei's Li true monarchs were emperors, and their immortal foundations would naturally reflect such transformations. She replied, "Thank you, sister." But Kang Tingyun shook her head and replied softly, "It's just a 3rd-grade method, though from a grotto heaven it's extremely hard to cultivate and difficult to gather qi. It's rather tasteless, honestly. I wouldn't use this alone to brush you off." She picked up the other box and smiled. "But this next item was obtained directly from a Taoist master. It's truly worth mentioning, since it is a top-tier 4th-grade spell art. My Taoist master obtained it from Su State long ago, and now it returns to its rightful heir." Li Qinghong accepted the jade slip and noticed it had a faint golden hue, with small characters carved into the corner. "Heavenly Radiance, Hidden Light." Chapter 947, Scattering of Purple Qi I. Li Qinghong picked up the jade slip and found it wasn't sealed. She could read it the moment she took it. Though she deeply desired it, she still frowned and said, "This is far too valuable." Kang Tingyun shook her head and softly said, "Sister, take it first. There's something else I need to talk to you about." Li Qinghong noticed the seriousness in her expression and had no choice but to set the jade slip down gently. "Please speak, sister." Kang Tingyun looked at her earnestly, held her hand, and said softly, "Qinghong, does Ziming have the heart to pursue the Purple Mansion?" Li Qinghong's heart clenched and she looked at her with some confusion. Kang Tingyun hesitated for a second, then spoke seriously, "I know your family has a genius disciple, comparable to Kai Buzi and a revival of the Bright Yang bloodline. Esteemed families have few secrets in Jiangnan. Even Zyro shooting could only make open moves back then, and was unable to plant hidden ones. All the sects are well aware. Wei State has good relations with Green Pine Temple and the Golden Feather sect, and Emperor Gong of Wei is a wise elder. That's how the Li family remains safe in Jiangnan. The Mount Tan Li family in Wu State doesn't cultivate the Bright Yang Dao and claims no connection, but their bloodline carries some traces. That alone allows them to stay in Jiangnan, and they have a Purple Mansion realm cultivator among them. so this path is not impossible. Everyone in the Purple Mansion realm knows the Radiant Sky Stone is reserved for the heir, and that time is still far off. But since I'm a bit closer to your family, I can't help but notice. Does Ziming have his eyes on the Purple Mansion realm? Is he perhaps coveting that Radiant Sky Stone? Her eyes brimmed with worry as she offered heartfelt advice. Sister, you should know better in this matter. Does Ziming even have a 5% chance to break through? The Radiant Sky Stone doesn't boost your chances just a little. Without enough secret techniques, it's not much use even if taken. I'll be blunt, this isn't something he should pursue on a whim. Li Qinghong's heart eased. When she saw the sincerity in the round-faced woman's eyes, she suddenly understood. No wonder the matter of the Radiant Sky Stone concluded the way it did. The Purple Mansion realm cultivators had already predicted we'd stake everything on Minghuang. Everything done to conceal Minghuang growing up wasn't in vain. The Purple Mansion realm cultivators only think he has the bright Yang bloodline, not that he carries a thread of fate. Li Qinghong didn't know how confident Li Xiaowei was about breaking into the Purple Mansion realm. But having witnessed Gu Shentong, Cheng Xiao, and two Longjian rise one after another, she believed the odds were high. After thinking it through, she spoke up. What role exactly does the Radiant Sky Stone play in the process of forming divine abilities? I hope sister can shed some light. Kong Tingyun answered softly, this isn't easy to explain. The number of secret techniques varies. May I ask how many your family possesses? Li Qinghong's heart skipped a beat, and a thought flashed through her mind like lightning. I'll just mention however many secret techniques Ziming has cultivated. She answered, only one. Kong Tingyun nodded and replied, that's perfectly normal. If one can master even a single secret technique, then after consuming the Radiant Sky Stone, it might only raise their chances by 5%. Li Qinghong nodded regretfully. Seeing this, Kong Tingyun felt like she had listened and gently continued, these things depend on the individual, but it absolutely can't be left to Ziming's whim. Ancient cultivators could resonate with heaven and earth, so breakthroughs were much easier. Treasures like the Radiant Sky Stone were more effective then. Nowadays, the odds are hard to quantify. Li Qinghong nodded softly and replied, I'll remember what you said, sister. Kong Tingyun smiled and nodded, but in her heart, Li Qinghong shook her head. Whether the Radiant Sky Stone went to Ziming or Xiaowei, it was no longer within her power or right to decide. Zijin obtained this treasure. He must have trusted Ziming and believed Xiaowei would succeed on his own. At most, he thought Xiaowei might be sabotaged early. But whether the Radiant Sky Stone was kept or not made little difference, thought Li Qinghong, and she, Li Qinghong, would soon head to the Thunder Arts Grotto heaven. Li Xiaowei would then be the one managing the household. Would he really lay a hand on Li Ziming's Radiant Sky Stone? Before Zijin's death, she thought Li Ziming might willingly hand over the Radiant Sky Stone, but now, seeing the calm in his eyes, she could tell his thoughts were deeply stubborn. It went without saying. As for the matter of the Thunder Arts Grotto heaven, she seems completely unaware. It appears Changxi is too fearful to get involved and has said nothing to her. If I bring it up, it'll only strain our relationship and offend the Purple Mansion realm cultivators. Kong Tingyun forced the jade slip into her hand, and only then did Li Qinghong finally have the mind to glance at the technique. Gather heavenly light, absorb the radiance, draw it into the Juke acupoint, and refine it into a form. This becomes the heavenly radiance, hidden light. Suppress it with spiritual sense, release it from the center of the eyebrows. It can capture malevolent spirits, sever spiritual energy, and cut through good and evil. She skimmed it briefly but still accepted it with thanks. After a short conversation, Li Qinghong brought up her impending trip to the Eastern Sea, and Kong Tingyun readily agreed. The two of them then left Lake Xi'an and headed south together. On the other side, Li Xiaowei had just exited the Zhenan Serpent Dragon Palace and was heading toward the Tail Subkingdom. The demon generals on either side carried themselves with far more deference. The one with bulging cheeks and black armor bowed his head, while the other with a gaping mouth and long whiskers grinned ingratiatingly. My lord, such righteousness. Our eyes burned with envy seeing a treasure like that, yet you didn't even take it. It was the same two who had brought forth the Purple Mansion realm spirit artifact, so they naturally knew what an astonishing treasure Li Xiaowei had declined. When they saw that even Ding Jiao treated him with respect, they couldn't resist fawning over him. In some ways, demons were no different than humans. The journey was long, and Li Xiaowei made idle conversation. Then, the black-faced demon general with bulging cheeks suddenly muttered, My lord has such composure. Gu Shentong couldn't even bear to look away when he was in front of the same Purple Mansion realm spirit artifact. At that, Li Xiaowei grew alert. Inwardly, he thought coldly, Gyu Shentang, the same purple mansion realm spirit artifact. He slowed his pace slightly, gazed into the distance, and smiled as he said, "I've heard of him. He's the master of Crimson Reef Island." The two demons had been offering dry flattery, but seeing that he'd taken an interest, they finally seized the chance to speak and were overjoyed. The long-whiskered, wide-mouthed demon said, "My lord, the two of us served the crown prince early on, before he even left the palace, and when he was still following the Dragon King of Jin Si. Gyu Shentang once came to the Dragon King's palace and took a command token with him. It was also a spirit artifact. A spirit artifact, the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. Gyu Shentang may have struck a deal with the Dragon King." He pondered for a moment. These two demons had rambled for quite a while yet still hadn't explained why Gyu Shentang had received such a reward. It was likely that they had not been qualified to attend court and were simply relaying fragments. Li Xiaowei softly said, "I wonder how he is now." The black-armored, thick-jawed demon grunted and replied, "That man birthed a merging fire token. The Bin Crow is short-lived and not too bright. He got better after breaking into the Purple Mansion realm, but still liked taking dangerous risks. He's been gone a long time now, likely dead." Chapter 948, Scattering of Purple Qi II. Li Xiaowei could tell the demon didn't know much. They then continued onward to the Tail Subkingdom, which now looked completely different from before. Lanterns flickered everywhere, and the sand was covered in pristine white clams of various sizes. Several clam spirits in pink-white robes, having taken human form, were opening the shells to search for pearls. A pink-robed woman approached, holding a basket filled with large, round, luminous pearls. The long-whiskered demon received it and spoke in a low voice, "This is a token of the Tail Subkingdom's sincerity. Please, my lord, take it back with you." Only then did he dare bring it forward, watching Li Xiaowei nervously. The clam spirit fell to her knees with a thud, prostrating herself and crying out, "This lowly one swears on her life. It truly was because I was bearing a pearl that I couldn't move. I beg you, my lord, to see the truth." The surrounding demon generals seemed familiar with her and hurried to speak on her behalf. Li Xiaowei had no interest in determining whether the Sea clans had deliberately avoided him earlier. He simply waved a hand and said, "It's fine." He stepped forward and the two demons escorted him into the palace atop the Beast Mount. Huiyao had been waiting at the entrance in a daze. When he saw them approaching, a mere glance at the demon's attitude told him most of what he needed to know. He bowed respectfully and said, "My lord has returned." After Li Xiaowei entered the hall, Huiyao quietly tugged at the demon's sleeves and whispered, "About those 60,000 teeth. Forget it." The two demons casually brushed him off and walked away. Huiyao, relieved, entered the hall, only to meet Li Xiaowei's piercing gaze. The young man stood in the center of the chamber and asked, "What matter is this?" Huiyao bowed lower and respectfully replied, "One of the Dragon Sun's 8 consorts required a Dharma robe. It must be made using Sea Hui fangs. The estimate was 60,000 pieces, originally to be provided by our tribe. Thanks to the heir, the lives of 30,000 of our children were spared." Li Xiaowei, familiar with Eastern sea customs, had seen much along the way. Only now did he truly understand how lowly Foundation Establishment realm demonic creatures such as Huiyao and even the Queen of the Tail Subkingdom had to be. He quietly said, "You've always been like this. Always have been." Huiyao remained standing and asked in confusion, "It's been this way for millions of years. Why would it be different? Even before we took human form, we lived like this. Every year my Hui clan must absorb the essence Qi of thousands upon thousands of spirit crabs. It's the natural order." Li Xiaowei gave no reply. He watched Huiyao retreat and continued staring into the wine in his cup. "Dingjiao doesn't see me as human. Then what about pristine water? Is a true monarch human? A true monarch is like a dragon, a Foundation Establishment realm like a Hui, and mortals are just crabs. The world above the sea is no different from the seabed." He stared into his wine in silence. Though Dingjiao's palace was extravagantly luxurious, filled with laughter and music, none of it had eased Li Xiaowei's heart. Instead, the demeanor of the Tail Subkingdom and Huiyao kept swirling in his thoughts. Li Xiaowei had been mature-minded since childhood. He had seen many kinds of people, and now that he had encountered demonic creatures, he realized there wasn't much difference. They all loved to devour humans. He couldn't help but begin to question. They say the heavenly Tao is broken, and the world turned out like this. But who can say whether the world became this way, or if it was always this way, if the heavenly Tao is broken? Is it better that all beings be free, or that something above still governs them? Blood food, blood food. Those who refrain from eating humans lose a third of their power. Can they really contend with those who do? He had never been ordinary since birth. As thoughts swirled in his mind, he mused, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Since so many elders are wholeheartedly supporting me, how can I let them down? Li Xiaowei lifted the hem of the mat to think for a moment, then put it back casually. The sea outside the palace shifted and came to rest. They had likely arrived at the Hui clan's territory. A cluster of shadows approached, and Huiyao lowered his voice as he drove off the younger ones crowding near. Go on, all of you get back. Purple smoke blessed land. Purple mist gathered ceaselessly in the sky, drifting across the mountain peaks in wisps and tendrils, spiraling upward. Pavilions and towers dotted the land, all stunningly beautiful. A small pavilion stood upon the endless sea of purple mist. A woman in green robes stood to the side, while a female cultivator in purple leaned against the stone steps. Her flowing skirts fell from the high cliff like the mist itself, and halfway down, they dissolved into purple mist. Her brows were slightly flat, and her face habitually calm. A rare hint of confusion flickered in her eyes as she gazed far into the distance. The purple mist across the blessed land stirred with her every breath, but Can Zuyu said nothing. Beside her, Shen Yanqing stood with a trace of sorrow. Purple energy surged from Can Zuyu's body as she raised her fingers to divine and thought silently. The items have already been delivered to the Dragon Kin. Dongfeng Lian is still honorable enough not to break his word. That bastard Yuan Su has already promoted Li Xuanfeng, and I can no longer touch him. I've at least done my part by going through the Dragon Kin. She said softly, Yanqing, once I fall, you should return home. Your father is in seclusion, and the Shen family needs someone to take charge. Shen Yanqing responded with a nod. The small pavilion was shielded by formations, so there was no fear of being overheard by those in the Purple Mansion realm above. She murmured, if Master is reborn and has any requests, just send a letter to my Shen family. I will always be waiting. There's no need. Can Zuyu let out a faint chuckle and shook her head gently, her voice barely audible. She mentally compared the faces of the Li family with the one buried deep in her heart, but found no resemblance. Her thoughts drifted, and she spat inwardly. He must be a descendant of one of his family brothers. HMPH. Surely he wouldn't have had some illegitimate child behind my back. Her eyes lit up for a brief moment, and her cold expression melted into a shy smile. But the light vanished just as quickly, and Can Zuyu looked out toward the sky. Quite a few had come to witness the ceremony, though most had believed she would rely on that trace of metallic essence to reincarnate and wouldn't achieve much. She was, after all, one of those indebted to Li Jiangquan. So the Purple Mansion realm cultivators held no small amount of hope. Purple chi surged skyward from Can Zuyu's body, drawing all the purple and crimson hues in the sky toward her. The clouds turned into a pure purple cluster, falling upon her in waves. A purple glow emerged at the center of her brow. She joined two fingers, placed them to her lips, and exhaled a breath of purple chi. This purple chi was entirely different from the vast purple around her. It was more ethereal, and was tinged with traces of pale white. It was just a single wisp, but it hovered before her and slowly condensed into a pill-like shape. In that instant, the world echoed with the chanting of Taoist scriptures. The scent of incense filled the air as the mountain ranges of purple smoke blessed land stirred with a low rumble. Deer raised their heads and birds fell silent. Heavenly cultivation, purple chi, immortal origin, metallic essence. Purple energy burst across the mountain range. A dense script appeared on every falling leaf. The incense sticks in every burner across the mountain went out on their own, quivering like living beings. Ashes crawled back up the wicks, slowly returning to their unlit form. The woman in the sky looked like a goddess riding mist, yet sparkling tears rolled down her cheeks. Can Zuyu was filled with overwhelming joy. Brother Jiangquan, I've finally made it through these 400 years. The brilliant radiance of the condensed purple essence surged into the sky. All the wisps of purple mist she had once scattered across the heavens with her divine abilities were now rushing back, carrying the chanting from every corner of Yue State, all converging into the cluster of chi before her. But Can Zuyu suddenly stopped, letting out a quiet sigh. While all the cultivators marveled at Zaipai's profound cultivation, two shadows high in the sky exchanged glances, both showing surprise. One of them spoke in a sharp voice, she. Thankfully, we brought the 9-layer attribute net for her. Chapter 949, Entering the Abyss I, Eastern Sea. Pine winds stirred across Spleetered Island as Li Zijai changed into white robes and quietly sat by the table. No one else was around, leaving an uncanny silence, with only the moonlight spilling across the table. The man held a jade wine pot as he paced around the table, never taking a seat. His wife, Yang Xiaor, had entered seclusion 2 years ago to break through to the Foundation establishment realm. There had been no news since, and he often worried. Soon, he received word that Li Zijian had perished in the Eastern Sea while trying to seize the Radiant Sky Stone. Upon hearing the news, Li Zijai had collapsed into the inner hall, weeping bitterly, unable to calm himself for a long time. Even after several years, he still often recalled the incident. Junner. Li Zijai poured himself a cup of wine, filling the one across the table as well, his heart a tangled mess of emotions. Li Zijai had returned home several times, and each time, Li Zijian had spoken with him at length. He had always been calm, and after receiving the talisman Qi, had grown even more emotionless. Brother Zicheng gained his position and felt uneasy, and Ziming was too soft and full of guilt, but was Junner any better? He first exposed Ziming, then questioned Zicheng, and even eliminated threats by sending Yuexiang away. His heart was the heaviest with dread. What a tangled mess. How could it ever be unraveled? Among all the entanglements of the Li family, it was Li Zijai, an outsider to their internal strife, who saw things the clearest and knew the most. Now, pouring wine on the ground, he muttered, "Grandfather always said the four Zais were bound by affection." But how could mere affection explain it all? When kinship isn't enough, resentment and guilt cannot be resolved. When hatred isn't enough, envy and dread cannot be shown. All of it was to perfect a single divine art. He poured 3 cups onto the ground, bowed deeply, then packed away the pot and cups. Collecting all his emotions, he stepped out calmly. As he emerged from the woods, Li Wushou approached. The old demonic creature had already reached the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. As his state of mind transformed, the youthful form he had first assumed gradually faded. Wrinkles lined his stern face as he bowed and said, "Young master." Li Zijai took the letter from him, glanced over it, and turned to ask, "Wushou, how effective were the flower of Mu Si and the spiritual uplift pill?" Though Li Wushou was in the late Foundation establishment realm, his combat strength was lacking. Even a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm disciple of exalted immortal sects could likely handle him, which was clearly insufficient. So Li Zijai had specially invited 2 alchemists to Spleetard Island to examine the matter. Both were senior experts who had seen many spirit beasts, and after a careful look, they were somewhat surprised. This beast may lack mystical prowess, but its bloodline is quite unusual. Its ancestors likely cultivated or consumed some azure manifestation-type spirit herb. This is truly a potent tonic. If this beast is used as furnace material, it would certainly produce an excellent batch of essence-gathering pills. Li Wushou was stunned, and his eyes filled with both suspicion and menace. Only after Li Zijai explained in detail did the 2 alchemists realize he merely wanted pills to boost strength. They agreed readily, though still expressed some regret. "Sir, you truly don't wish to refine an essence-gathering pill. This demonic creature is premium material. If we reinforce its foundation first, its essence will lose some of its flavor." The old snake's face had gone foul. Li Zijai could only send the alchemists off with a wry smile, though his thoughts had begun to stir. Wushou was born a black-scaled, hooked serpent, and his bloodline was far from impressive. Perhaps the 6 Dam's life-matching unique technique is starting to show some benefit, having reinforced him so many times. Using Supreme Yin Moonlight to match one's life essence would be seen as extravagant even by the most illustrious families. No wonder the alchemists had called it a supreme tonic, so he specially found a good spirit item, refined a pill, and gave it to Li Wushou. Li Wushou slowly transformed in front of him. Inky black scales surfaced across his body, and his eyes turned pitch black as he spoke in a deep hum. "This subordinate cultivates the water mansion system's morning cold rain. Its effects have grown even more refined, so I can now manipulate inferior water and suppress spirit wind." He displayed his various mystical abilities, and Li Zijai watched silently, hesitating to speak before softly saying, "Excellent. I'll fetch you more spell arts when I have the chance. It will surely make you even stronger." The corners of Li Wushou's mouth twitched. He bowed in gratitude and thought inwardly, just what kind of people are the Li family? Forget that sword immortal, take even Li Xuanfeng. One arrow from that brute and no matter what spell you have, you'll be down and crying for your mother. And now the young master's cultivation grows deeper by the day, to the point of being unfathomable. There's still the air and Qinghang, but Li Zijai didn't care what he was thinking. He glanced through the report in his hand, let out a faint chuckle and shook his head. Truly interesting. I thought Ning Hijing wouldn't be able to hold back, yet he turned out to be unexpectedly well-behaved. Instead, it was Kai Fubo who struck fast and viciously, seizing the initiative and pulling him right out of position. Li Wushou couldn't help but smile and asked quietly, "Is their internal strife good for us?" "Good." Li Zijai shook his head and said with a touch of sarcasm, "How could that be good? These people aren't fools, with such a major threat looming. Would they really start tearing into each other so recklessly? Everyone knows the saying. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. He reviewed all the position changes and smiled. Rather than a fight, it's more of a compromise. Ning Hijing did lose the position of peak master of Yuanxing Peak, but all his trusted subordinates are still sitting pretty up there. How outrageous. Li Wuxiao read through the list twice. The dense rows of names made his head spin, and he cursed in his heart, damn it, humans really are cunning. Just fight it out already, why all the scheming and trickery? Still, though cursing inwardly, he humbly asked, so are the Ning and Kai families scheming against us? Not exactly. Li Zijai shook his head and said with a smile, they really did tear into each other, but everyone came out satisfied after the fight. It was all a trade of interests. Ning Hijing, that heavyweight sect master faction, stepped down from the peak, but he was given an even better post elsewhere. The Kai family lacks manpower, so they naturally wouldn't fall out with the Ning family. Leaving those people on the peak gives them support, weakens the Ning faction, and helps appease Ning Hijing's mood. Li Wuxiao pondered a while and asked, where's he going? Where? Li Zijai casually pointed at the bamboo grove behind him. Of course, he's being sent to the Eastern Sea. No matter which side loses, they'd take over my position here. Isn't that perfect for everyone? Ning Hijing is fierce but lacks cunning. He's definitely the one coming. First, it gets that eyesore out of the sect. Second, it puts him in control of one of the two key seas. As long as Kai Zuxiao gives the order, how could Ning Hijing disobey? Once in the Eastern Sea, he'll be busy cracking down and purging opposition, so he won't have time to meddle with sect politics. All that infighting just weakens the Sea family and strengthens his own. Li Wuxiao remained quiet for a while, then murmured, and Lord Sea. Would he really stand by and do nothing? The Eastern Sea has long been marked as one to be given up. Li Zijai sighed, a touch of regret in his voice as he said, it's just a shame about this bamboo grove. That guy loves planting iron pillars everywhere, so this whole mountain will soon look like a porcupine. I doubt it'll survive. Chapter 950, Entering the Abyss, II. Knowing Li Zijai had plans, Li Wuxiao spoke softly, what should we do now? Li Zijai said softly, let's head into the island's abyss under the pretense of inspection before the official order arrives. We'll toss the whole situation to that guy and focus on treasure hunting before we leave. A gleam of rainbow light rose and fell from his hand as he mused inwardly. As long as the order doesn't arrive, I can use this excuse to dodge everything. Both sides will accept it. As for those messy, incomplete records, naturally they'll be left for Lord Ning. He's got talent, surely he can sort them out even without assistance. After a brief moment of thought, Li Zijai swiftly wrote 2 letters and sent them home. Without delay, he tidied up his cave dwelling and left without looking back. He stepped out, left a letter for his subordinates, and rode the wind with the old demon to the center of the island. There, a great abyss opened up, its exposed cliff walls glowing a crimson red. Several golden-robed cultivators stood before the chasm. The group all bowed in greeting. Li Zijai spoke gently, so today is the day the Golden Feather sect reinforces this place. I wish to enter for investigation. May I trouble you to open the formation? The Golden Feather sect had always maintained a lukewarm relationship with the Azure Pond sect. Yet these men treated him with surprising warmth, calling him Taoist as they brought out a map. They smiled as they told him, the earth veins have shifted slightly in recent months. Perhaps one of the 3 monarchs of Lesser Yang grew temperamental or went visiting a fellow cultivator. Taoist, do be cautious. The abyss on Spleetered Island had formed when a demon monarch had been split into 3. Various forces had mixed, which corrupted the earth veins with wicked energy, yet falling water rising storm had little impact on it. The real changes came when any of the 3 true monarchs passed nearby. Very well, said Li Zijai. That was exactly what he wanted to hear. He nodded in thanks and without wasting a moment, took Li Wuxiao with him into the depths. As he vanished into the abyss, the 3 disciples of the Golden Feather sect resealed the formation. One of the women whispered, so that's Li Zijai of the Moongaze Li family. Handsome indeed, and his strength doesn't seem low either. Of course. Another cultivator's face lit up with pride as he shook his head and said, my peak's grand martial uncle, Zhang Yun, is a close friend of Li Tongya. Even the immortal archer Li Xuanfeng had to call him uncle. How could a descendant of such people be ordinary? His admiration for Zhang Yun extended to Li Tongya, which gave him a favorable view of the entire Li family. Though Li Tongya was famous, Zhang Yun remained obscure among the rogue cultivators, so he eagerly brought him up to highlight his grand martial uncle's status. The 3 continued chatting and laughing until a streak of light descended swiftly onto the island, circled the peak once, then landed directly before them. Where is the peak master of Changshan Peak? Si Tongyi. The three of them recognized him, but held him in disdain. They replied with cool indifference, "The Taoist has already entered the formation." "So be it, so be it." Si Tongyi let out a sigh of relief, then turned and left. A few hours later, another streak of light descended rapidly upon the peak, circled once, and also landed. This newcomer bore the Azure Pond Sect's seal, his face filled with shock as he asked, "Where is the peak master of Changshan Peak?" The three recognized him as someone from the Kai family. One continued reading, while the other kept cultivating. None of them paid him any mind. The bicolor scaled beast surged from the sea, the palace on its back glimmering with shimmering scales before it submerged again. Once it docked, Huiyao opened the palace doors and respectfully said, "My lord, please." Li Xiaowei emerged from the palace. King Heng had been waiting at the shore. The monk craned his neck until he saw Li Xiaowei disembark, then finally breathed a sigh of relief. Huiyao carried a basket of pearls, each one as large as a fist and dazzling in luster. Watching their expressions, he quietly slipped them into King Heng's hands and whispered, "Please accept these, my lord. The Tail's sub-kingdom queen is timid by nature, and not the kind to orchestrate such things. One fright and she hasn't slept a wink in days. I beg your grace, give her a way out." King Heng, being kind-hearted, listened to Huiyao's murmured explanation and had grasped most of the situation. He had already taken the basket, but afraid of making a misstep, glanced at Li Xiaowei. When he saw Li Xiaowei nod, Huiyao was overjoyed and thanked them repeatedly. King Heng gently supported him and said warmly, "Fellow Taoist Huiyao, you have a kind heart. You're truly a fine creature." Huiyao was a bit dazed to hear that, knowing he'd done plenty of shady deeds. His face twitched with guilt as he mumbled a soft response. Li Xiaowei turned to look toward the other side, where a young man in armor stood with a sword in hand. Chen Yang had guarded the island for several years. Since Li Xiaowei and Li Chenghui were in closed-door cultivation, and King Heng was not one to manage affairs, most responsibilities had fallen to him. Though only at the third stage of the Qi cultivation realm, his demeanor had changed greatly. The viciousness and suspicion that had once flickered in his gaze had completely vanished. With the countenance of a Li clansman, and stripped of those coarse expressions, Chen Yang now appeared much steadier. But when facing Li Xiaowei, he still lowered his eyes, staring at his cheeks rather than those golden pupils, and respectfully said, "Greetings, my lord. Rise." Li Xiaowei's gaze did not linger on him. Instead, he turned to exchange a few words with Huiyao. The demonic creature then rode the beast away. Chen Yang counted the pearls and said softly, "My lord, 16 water pearls in total. It barely reaches the threshold for a Foundation Establishment Realm spirit item." As Li Xiaowei stepped into the hall, he replied softly, "Keep them well. The quality is decent. If divided, they're best used for top-grade Qi cultivation realm items. But once we return to the lake, it's best to gather a full set of 16 and forge a Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma artifact set." Chen Yang carefully stored them away, then took out a jade slip from his robe and offered it with both hands. He bowed respectfully as he said, "My lord, this contains records of all island affairs over the past few years. There's records of appointments and removals, as well as spirit ore and paddy yields. Every annual surplus was accounted for without the slightest discrepancy." Li Xiaowei accepted the slip and glanced through it. He had to admit, Chen Yang had kept the island in impeccable order these past years. Every spirit field and mine had been managed with precision, and the annual surplus even rivaled the total from the previous 3 years combined. This man is ambitious and ruthless, but his capabilities are beyond doubt. It takes someone like him to keep an island full of outer sea cultivators in line. It was precisely because Chen Yang had ambition that he refrained from touching any of the island's resources. The cultivators feared him to the extreme. Even Li Chenghui, capable as he was, had to yield some benefits to win hearts. Yet under Chen Yang's rule, the administration had become extraordinarily clean. King Heng waited patiently. Once Li Xiaowei finished reading, he silently handed over the letter he held in his hand. Li Xiaowei took the letter, skimmed it quickly, then shut his eyes tightly. He waited several seconds before lifting his brows and exhaling, asking, "Did Grey Tunkel Zijin leave any words?" King Heng shook his head. Li Xiaowei waved for Chen Yang to leave, then sat silently in the hall for a few moments. When he saw King Heng's pale face, Li Xiaowei said hoarsely, "With Uncle fallen, I must return at once." Chapter 951, Tanya I. Li Qinghong flew all the way past Lake Xi'an, entered the sea, and crossed the line once marked by a true monarch. The sky above darkened with thick clouds, and the purple hue of the inland seas could no longer be seen clearly. The golden mountain in Kong Tingyun's hand shimmered as it glided across the sea. Streaks of light flew by in the sky. When the two stopped at Spleetered Island, disciples from Profound Peak Gate promptly came to receive them. Spleetered Island sat at the heart of the shallow sea. It had once been a stronghold of the Moonlight Origin Mansion, but after the Immortal Mansion secluded itself, various immortal sects from Jiangnan moved in. Gates and sects like Hengzhu Dao Gate and the Azure Pond sect secured prime positions early on, while Profound Peak Gate, being a weaker latecomer, could only settle on the fringes. The Azure Pond sect was now administered by Li Zijai. Kang Tingyun had deliberately made this stop to allow the aunt and nephew to meet, but also to use the opportunity to grow closer with Li Zijai. However, when she sent someone to inquire, the response made her expression subtly change. Ning Hijing is the one guarding this place now. Kang Tingyun felt a faint sense of unease. She wasn't deeply familiar with the Azure Pond sect's internal affairs, so she turned to explain everything in detail to Li Qinghang. The latter, however, showed no surprise at all. Ever since word of Kai Buzi spread and Si Yuanli began his seclusion, this was only a matter of time. Removing Si Yuanli's faction was inevitable. Hearing that Li Zijai had already entered the abyss confirmed he had a plan. Meanwhile, the Profound Peak Gate disciple hesitated slightly and said quietly, "Unfortunately, the timing was poor. The peak master of Changshan Peak went into the abyss, and many sect documents weren't handed over. The seals are missing." Lord Ning has already sat atop the peak for several days and sent multiple letters back to the sect. The always perceptive Kang Tingyun instantly grasped the implications. She chuckled while inwardly thinking, there's no need to guess. The Azure Pond sect's reef markets across the Eastern Sea are either under the Yangs, the Sis, or Li Zijai's people. Ning Hijing, HMPH. As Li Qinghang listened, her thoughts drifted to Kai Buzi, the Kai family's Purple Mansion realm cultivator. She had once seen the so-called Kai family treasure tree. Though she couldn't fully understand everything she'd heard, one thing was clear. Kai Buzi likely harbored deep resentment toward pristine water, and his ambitions were even greater. He probably has truly given up on the Azure Pond sect. Kang Tingyun glanced at Li Qinghang, then turned to ask, did Ning Hijing bring anyone with him? The guard respectfully replied, most of the Ning family remains within the sect. He brought back a few guest cultivators, all transferred from Yi Mountain City. There's even someone from Mount Yue. Someone from Mount Yue. Li Qinghang raised her brows in mild surprise and asked, do you know his background? Do you know his name? The person quickly retrieved a jade slip from his sleeve, hesitating awkwardly before whispering, he's originally from Moongaze Lake. He once cultivated there, but, supposedly, his territory was seized, and he was later captured by Lord Chunfeng and brought all the way back to Yi Mountain City. He's a clever one and ended up joining the Ning family. I heard that his name is Fei Loya. The man spoke vaguely in her presence, but Kang Tingyun understood at once. The Moongaze Lake was now under Li family control. Who else could have taken the Mount Yue man's territory? She lowered her gaze and said, so there was an old enmity. No wonder he threw his lot in with Ning Hijing. Qinghang, as her probing gaze swept over, Li Qinghang was momentarily stunned in her heart. Who? Fei Loya. How could Li Qinghang not recognize that name? He was an old veteran from Mount Yue, and a rather capable one at that. She had seen him multiple times, and every time this old Mount Yue cultivator had come pleading for a way to survive. Later, when Li Xuanfeng returned, he took him south to serve under the Ning family. Who would have thought that after all the twists and turns he would end up here? Enmity. Thought Li Qinghang. Li Qinghang fell silent. There likely wasn't any deep grudge between Fei Loya and the Li family, nor had there ever been any great favor owed. This so-called enmity was probably just a ploy to curry power, but it was hard to tell what that old man was truly thinking. One thing was clear, the old man was cunning and certainly had means. Ning Hijing would probably make great use of him. Naturally, she wouldn't undermine Fei Loya for no reason, and simply sighed, it's true. Kang Tingyun looked thoughtful, while Li Qinghang, inspired by this bit of information, quickly pieced together the arrangements between the Si and Kai factions. Her heart settled further. Just then, the disciple from Profound Peak Gate said, there is one more matter to report to the sect master. Speak, Kang Tingyun prompted, and the man responded, news from a few days ago says the 16th young master of the Golden Tang Gate broke through, mastering several advanced arts. He asked the sect master to step down and took the position himself. Now the Golden Tang Gate is entirely under his control. Kang Tingyun shook her head lightly and said, that's just their old tradition. There's some coup or assassination every. Back in the day, during the Li Ziya affair, the Azure Pond sect was flourishing, and the Golden Tang Gate leaned toward the Azure Pond sect's faction. Now that the Azure Pond sect is declining, it's only natural they shift toward the Golden Feather sect's side. After thinking for a moment, she added, I remember it was the Golden Feather sect who supported Situ Nu long ago in killing his brother to ascend. Later, the Azure Pond sect backed the first lineage in restoring power. This 16th young master who just rose again must be a descendant of Situ Nu. Wise as always, sect master. The man responded respectfully. He is a surviving orphan from those days. Named Situ Mo, he was born of a maidservant. Situ. Kong Tingyun was truly taken aback and turned to look at Li Qinghong, only to find her expression equally conflicted. Kong Tingyun sighed softly and shook her head, saying, So it's him. Even when I fought him back then, I did not think he was an ordinary man. But I never imagined he had such a background. Li Qinghong sighed inwardly. She truly did know Situ Mo. His mother was once a woman from the Jai family and had harbored deep hatred ever since. She had even ambushed one of her own juniors. The Li family had once laid a trap with Profound Peak Gate but had failed to keep him. Li Qinghong merely murmured, He's extremely cautious, quick-witted, not someone easy to deal with. Exactly. Kong Tingyun found herself somewhat troubled as well. She had crossed swords with this man during her first time stationed offshore and understood him well. Though he was a formidable enemy, she had to admit his abilities. She said, I tried to trap him several times, and he evaded me each time. His level of caution and cunning is among the highest I've seen. Li Qinghong even held back a deeper thought. My second uncle brought his bow to the Eastern Sea twice, but that guy hid like a turtle and refused to leave his island. Once he sent Mutuo, another time Sidu Chen. Both times someone else took the fatal blow for him. He's somehow held out until now. After reviewing the intel, Kong Tingyun took her off the island again. This time they had a swift and steady spirit boat from Profound Peak Gate. The two sat calmly in the cabin as Kong Tingyun spoke softly. Sister, there's no need to worry. The Sidu family has only survived till now because their Purple Mansion realm cultivator lingers in the southern sea. They pop up now and then, but never dare return to Jiangnan. Sidu Mo wouldn't dare make a move. Li Qinghong nodded. She had some knowledge of how the Purple Mansion realm cultivators of Golden Tang Gate had long been abroad, but she ultimately knew less than Profound Peak Gate, who had married into the sect. She whispered, I wonder which families have a grudge against Golden Tang Gate. It all goes back to Sidu Tang. Kong Tingyun replied softly. The Golden Tang Gate was founded by Sidu Tang. He had extraordinary talent, and some even suspected he was blessed by fate itself. But his temperament was exceedingly domineering. At that time, Taoist Master Yuan Su was stationed at sea and went out to gather qi. Sidu Tang barged into Yuan Su's cave dwelling, killed the three-eyed Mount Tiro beast, took its eye, and left unscathed. Even Taoist Master Qiushui was injured by. He also feuded with Yuming of the Shen family and snatched a treasure from Taoist Yuan Ziyu. Eventually, he turned south and clashed with Hengzhu Dao Gate. In short, he never thought of the consequences. By making enemies everywhere, he left the Golden Tang Gate in a constant state of awkwardness. Li Qinghong felt her heart gradually settle. Kong Tingyun smiled, shook her head and said, It wasn't until he angered a dragon king in the sea and nearly died that he finally calmed down. Unfortunately, his lifespan was greatly reduced, and he never had the chance to reach the Golden Core realm before his death. Chapter 952, Tanyun II. The spirit boat sped south through the sky as the two conversed. The sea roared beneath them. After sitting for most of the day, they passed an island spewing black fire. The spirit boat suddenly shook with a loud rumble. Kong Tingyun looked up with a slight frown, lifted the curtain and stepped out. Li Qinghong looked up as well and saw roaring flames beneath them. The marketplace on the sea was in ruins, with several families seemingly locked in vicious battle. Sulphurous fire erupted as thick smoke billowed into the sky. A few stray spell arts had struck the spirit boat, prompting Kong Tingyun to reveal herself. Her late Foundation establishment realm aura, combined with the radiance of her full Dharma robes, instantly frightened the surrounding cultivators into panic. Many dropped to their knees. Spare us, my lady, spare us. Where do you think you are? Do you all have no regard for your lives? At her words, the cultivators who had unleashed the spells turned pale with terror and stammered in response. Foundation establishment realm cultivators flew in from the distance. One of them recognized her at a glance and quickly bowed, speaking humbly, Greetings, Fairy of the Immortal Sect. Allow me to offer our apologies for this incident. He seized the troublemakers with one hand, intending to kill them on the spot, but Kong Tingyun waved him down. She paused to question them thoroughly but could not find any deeper cause. Kong Tingyun frowned and observed them for a while. Once she was certain they had only caused unintentional harm, she let out a soft sigh. Meanwhile, Li Qinghong found the island oddly familiar. She lowered her gaze and quietly returned to the cabin. After a few moments, Kong Tingyun re-entered and sat across from her. She spoke softly. This is Dongliu Island. It used to belong to a rather decent family, but their old ancestor failed his breakthrough and perished. A few of the elder generations also died, and they suddenly couldn't hold such vast territory anymore. It's a pity. Our Taoist master once said that their ancestor had a fairly good chance of success, but he happened to run into falling water rising storm, and got washed to death by it. She poured tea for Li Qingheng and said gently, earlier, a few nearby families were besieging this place. The Han family has a solid foundation, so it's not so easy to topple them. They've apparently been fighting for over a year now. Li Qingheng listened quietly, her eyes fixed on her teacup. After taking a sip, she asked, how much farther is it from here to Zongquan? Kong Tingyun calculated for a moment and replied softly, there should be another 3 or 4 days' time. All right, replied Li Qingheng, nodding. She quietly sipped her tea, already making mental calculations in her heart. Crimson Reef Island. Crimson Reef Island was the second largest island in the shallow sea after Spleetard Island, but it was quite different. While Spleetard Island was a complete and unified landmass, Crimson Reef Island looked more like 5 or 6 large islands patched together. The island was divided into East Reef and West Reef, a geographic and administrative split. The entire reef archipelago was split in two by a sea trench over 500 kilometers wide. It was windless above, and so vast that ordinary Qi cultivation realm cultivators couldn't even fly across it. A woman in white stood on the sea dotted with jagged rocks. A frosty haze veiled her face, making her features indistinct. Her arms were folded across her chest. Tianwen had been waiting here for several days. It wasn't wasted time. Kai Buzi's probing had forced Taoist Master Tianyun to show himself. Rather than feeling pleased, Tianwen had grown even more alert. Tu Longjian. Ever since the loss of the 6 Ding merging fire token, Tianwen had grown suspicious that Tianyun from West Reef had kept a close eye on Tu Longjian ever since he secretly broke through to the Purple Mansion realm. Kai Buzi's recent stir-up confirmed for her that Tianyun had long since entered the Purple Mansion realm. The realization chilled her and filled her with doubt. The loss of the 6 Ding merging fire token was no accident. It must have been Tianyun's doing. And so, new questions began to surge in her mind. Was Tu Longjian truly just a hypocrite dressed in righteousness? The Taoist master went over the possibilities in her mind and slowly shook her head. West Reef's shadow has always loomed behind Tu Longjian. He must have wanted to protect Li Zijun, but the 6 Ding merging fire token was important enough for him to break his bottom line and abandon pride if needed. Linking it to how the token was lost, she nodded slightly and murmured, the merging fire token is no ordinary ancient artifact. It holds something within, maybe a hidden trove, a cultivation technique, a lead to some ancient grotto heaven, or even metallic essence. Husband. Tianwen folded her arms over her chest, as if speaking across space to her long-vanished husband Gu Shentang. Her voice softened. The Dragon Kin gave you the 6 Ding merging fire token. What kind of pact did you form with them, and what secrets did you hide within this spirit artifact? Tu Longjian, quite the name indeed. She stood quietly for a moment as a gust of fragrant wind swept in from the distance. It landed nearby and transformed into a man in sandalwood robes. He had arched brows and small eyes, but he was hunched over as he closely examined her. Tianwen lowered her gaze and murmured, Tianyun. This old servant greets madam. Taoist Master Tianyun chuckled slyly, his eyes lacking the slightest respect. Taoist Master Tianwen spoke softly, your spirituality is bound to him, so why not be honest with me? How is my husband now? Taoist Master Tianyun shook his head, replying mockingly, haven't had contact in ages. Pardon me, madam. There are far too many grotto heavens and secret realms in this world. What good is a mere strand of spirituality? Taoist Master Tianwen stared at him with quiet weight. Taoist Master Tianyun just laughed and said, why not ask the Golden Feather sect instead? Those immortal sects are far-sighted and formidable. I'm sure they know something. Tianwen remained silent for a while before speaking. There's no need to hide it. You handed the 6 Ding merging fire token to Tu Longjian, and Su Zio will surely die too. Why not keep this artifact in hand? Why give it to a bearer of fate like him? Could my husband be trapped in a grotto heaven, and needs this token carried inside to be rescued? As she spoke in a low voice, she carefully watched his expression and continued, or could it be? Her words were suddenly cut off by the demonic creature, whose tone had turned cold. You used their lives to test me and my master. Gu Hongyao, Gu Hongking, Gu Honger. How many direct descendants have already died? Tianwen, they were your children all the same. Chapter 953, Junior I, Descendants. Taoist Master Tianwen muttered the word with a trace of mockery and said quietly, "So what if they are? What are descendants? Are they descendants because I watch them grow up and thus feel affection, or because they revere me? None of that. I emerged from seclusion after breaking through, only to be greeted by a group of old men calling me ancestor. What does that have to do with me?" Tianyan let out a sigh. He still held some lingering bond of master and servant in his heart and tried to persuade her, but blood ties can never truly be erased. Even if you feel no affection for them, they are at least closer than strangers. Closer. Taoist Master Tianwen spoke through gritted teeth, her voice full of fury and icy disdain. "I possess divine abilities. I can see directly into human hearts. I see their every thought with crystal clarity, Tianyan. The women think only of hating and envying me. What closeness is there to speak of?" As for Guo Honger and Guo Hongjian, her expression grew even colder as a trace of cruelty rose. She spoke softly, "Fine. At least they weren't as stupid as Guo Hongyao. They knew I could read hearts, so they dared not think such things when facing me. But once I entered seclusion, they secretly indulged in lustful thoughts, fantasies of domination and sordid repayment. What closeness could there possibly be?" Tianyan was left speechless. He murmured, this, but still, Taoist Master Tianyan truly didn't know how to defend them anymore. Even Guo Shentong would have to bow his head in shame if he were here. He could only mutter, "After all, several hundred years have passed. It's hard to expect any real familial bond. You are pure and untarnished, a stunning beauty among mortals cultivating a Tao of untouchable frost and snow." So they harbored filthy thoughts. His voice grew quieter as he spoke, and inwardly he wished he could drag those Guo bastards out and kill them all. Yet he still tried to reason with her, "My lady. The ancients once said, to glimpse a man's heart is to witness his demons." Back then, cultivators who attained divine abilities feared visiting the mortal world, for a single glance with their divine ability would fill them with despair and rage. One's inner thoughts are the hardest to condemn. Who doesn't harbor desires of lust and greed deep within? Taoist Master Tianwen merely gazed at him in silence. Her entire being exuded an aura of frost and snow, with only a faint trace of her elegant eyes visible. She spoke softly. "The old texts say that once the life divine ability is mastered, one sees evil in all the world. That is why those of the Purple Mansion realm are without emotion and slay without hesitation. It's because they see sin in every soul. I understand now." Zhongquin Island. Li Qinghong and Kong Tingyun arrived at Zhongquin Island by spirit boat. Li Xiaowei approached them aboard the radiant light and cupped his hands in greetings, ancestor. Seeing him brought a rare smile to Li Qinghong's face as a gentle warmth bloomed in her expression. Li Xiaowei then turned to Kong Tingyun and offered her a cupped hands salute. "Greetings, senior." Kong Tingyun smiled and nodded, her round eyes examining him briefly before giving a slight nod of approval, thinking not bad. Li Qinghong had never allowed Li Xiaowei to kneel in her own household, and had previously kept him from meeting outsiders for a reason. If he had failed to reach Foundation Establishment Realm, encountering Kong Tingyun, the sect master of Profound Peak, would not have warranted a simple salute. According to cultivation etiquette, he would have had to kneel. Kong Tingyun was also sharp. Had he not bowed, she might have grown suspicious. But now that he had advanced to the Foundation Establishment Realm, both were cultivators of equal realm, so bowing was no longer required, thus avoiding unnecessary trouble. Li Qinghong stepped aside with a smile and said, "Kong Tingyun, sect master of Profound Peak Gate, this is my family's heir. I've long heard of your name." Kong Tingyun looked at him for a moment before slowly averting her gaze. Though Li Xiaowei's looks were merely above average, he possessed a charm that made it hard to look away. She chuckled inwardly. "I've heard that the Weisli lineage is known for its beauty." No wonder seeing Qinghong and Zijin is proof enough, but Li Qinghong was wary of lingering too long, fearing unexpected mishaps, and thus said, "Let's board the boat first." The two women boarded back on the boat. With Kong Tingyun present, Li Xiaowei decided not to bring up the matter of Ding Jiao. Once inside, Li Qinghong, visibly worried, asked, "How is Cheng doing?" "He's still in seclusion, no news so far." King Heng, standing nearby, answered in his stead. After some small talk, Li Xiaowei got a better sense of Kong Tingyun's temperament and finally asked, "Senior Kong, I've always had a question. Items like the 6 Ding Merging Fire token or the 6 Xin Unified Metal token seem to be part of a set. Where exactly did they come from?" Kong Tingyun hesitated for a moment before replying, "These spirit artifacts are fairly well known. They're likely connected to some immortal mansion, but I don't know much beyond that." Her answer was vague and was clearly lacking certainty. Sea winds howled outside the boat as the group continued heading north. After several days, they arrived at Yuezhu Island, home of the Profound Peak Gate. This was the Kong family's ancestral stronghold. Kong Tingyun smiled and pointed north, saying, "I forgot to inform your family that the Golden Tang Gate has sealed its mountain and lost Golden Sack Island. It now belongs to our family. Congratulations." Li Qingheng offered her congratulations. A disciple from the Profound Peak Gate came up with a message, which Kong Tingyun read carefully before speaking softly. "Taoist Master Zaipai has truly fallen." Li Qingheng wasn't well acquainted with the Taoist master, but the deceased had a respectable reputation, so she sighed in response. But Kong Tingyun chuckled. She might not actually be dead. Li Xiaowei raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Reincarnated?" "Exactly," Kong Tingyun said in a low voice. "Do you all remember how the Purple Mansion realm cultivators vanished for a time during the North-South conflict? It was because signs of Anhui heaven appeared within the Great Void, and among them were fragments of the Tianwu True Qi Divine Fiend Essence." Li Xiaowei's heart trembled as something struck him like lightning. True Essence. The old ape also possessed True Essence. And his breakthrough happened around that same time. The white ape's breakthrough was one of the most unexpected events for the Li family. His body was riddled with old injuries, many of which had damaged his foundation. Both Li Zicheng and Zhao Giluan had far better chances of success, yet he alone had succeeded. Thinking back now, it was truly a stroke of fortune. At that very time, the Purple Mansion realm cultivators were fighting within the Great Void, and the appearance of the Tianwu True Qi Divine Fiend Essence allowed him to seize that celestial opportunity. Li Xiaowei had long harbored doubts about the matter. Though he trusted the white ape, he had always suspected someone might have tampered with him in the past. Now he felt much more at ease. Across from him, Kong Tingyun continued, "The metallic essence was taken by Taoist Master Zaipai. According to our family's Taoist master, possessing metallic essence allows one to reincarnate freely. She's likely already slipped away." Chapter 954, Junior II, Mount Wu. Moongaze Lake's Mount Wu was where spiritual energy was the most concentrated. However, at present, a grand formation had sealed it off completely, isolating all fluctuations of qi. White mist flowed down the jade steps of the mountain in thick, milky streams like liquid jade. The blood pool at the summit had been transformed. Now it held a small pile of spirit stones and was soaked in gurgling spirit springs. Wisps of spiritual qi escaped the surface, flowing across the ancient jade floor. Jade pillars stood in rows. Li Ziming, dressed in his Taoist robe, stood atop the tallest one. With each breath, dense spiritual qi gathered from all directions and flowed into his acupoints. He slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a stream of heavenly radiance. It glimmered brightly amidst the mist before vanishing. A serene lantern lit up within his qi sea, floating above his immortal foundation. Its radiance flickered, illuminating everything within the qi sea. Heavenly lantern successfully refined. The radiant essence scripture contained 9 secret techniques: Yang Origin, Heavenly Lantern, Jewel Steps, Great Fissure, Reversal, 100 Arms Arsenal, Imperial Edict, Golden Scales, and Red Cicada, each with its own unique ability. Through secluded cultivation and aided by the Huai River map, Li Ziming had now refined the second one. There was no denying Li Ziming's astonishing talent. Just over 60 years old, and he had already mastered 2 secret techniques. Now that the Heavenly Lantern was refined, his immortal foundation underwent further transformation. The method of Heavenly Lantern pierces through darkness and purifies the spirit platform, doubling efficiency in scripture reading and spell art cultivation. Li Ziming was struck with sudden insight. It would be best to start with Heavenly Lantern. Even the simplest Yang Origin technique doesn't take much time. Focusing on these 2 first was the right choice, but these secret techniques. Li Ziming stared at the radiant lantern shimmering within his qi sea and thought to himself, these are truly exquisitely designed. Even among the 3 sects and 7 gates, secret techniques of this caliber are exceedingly rare. The more he practiced, the more he realized how precious these secret techniques were. Even the most basic Yang Origin contained mysteries that no other spell he had learned could rival, except for the immortal arts reception method and sacrificial ritual method. No one in the Li family had ever understood these 2 arts. They showed no obvious profundity, produced no spiritual energy, and felt more like calling for rain. Somehow, repeating them simply worked. None of the Li family's other spell arts aside from those 2 even came close. Each time Li Ziming practiced one of the secret techniques, it felt like sailing through a vast, boundless ocean. It was so immersive he often forgot to return. He exhaled deeply. After another half-month of stabilizing the Heavenly Lantern within the formation, he began cultivating the next spell. Suddenly, the formation flickered, and a small message appeared on the jade pillar. Li Ziming picked it up and glanced over it, reporting to the Lord, "The Zhao family has come to visit. If you have emerged from seclusion, we humbly request your presence." Li Ziming pondered for a moment. Since the message had been sent to him, it likely meant his aunt was not at home. The Zhao family could not be neglected, so he ascended in a beam of light and soared out of Mount Wu. He descended into the island's main hall and saw that many people were already gathered there. His granduncle Li Xuanxuan stood smiling to one side, while the white ape stood on the other like a stone statue. A middle-aged man with a kindly face and graying temples stood in the center of the hall. 2 strands of medicine pouches hung from his shoulders. A gentle smile rested on his face as he looked at Li Ziming with calm, relaxed eyes. Master. Li Ziming knew this face better than anyone. It was none other than his master, Zhao Yuanzi. He had always looked gentle and kind, but age now weighed heavily on him. His eyes carried weariness, his complexion was pale, and it seemed he had recently suffered some minor injuries. Li Ziming hadn't expected him to come in person and hurriedly performed a disciple's salute, standing respectfully to one side. The man took his hand, his eyes warm. His voice still carried the same rich gentleness it had all those years ago. "You've grown so much, Minger." After Li Zijian's death, Li Ziming had wept only once, and since then had no room in his heart for mourning. But those words made his eyes sting. He said in a low voice, "Disciple Ziming greets master." "Good." Zhao Yuanzi, though aged, still bore a middle-aged appearance from years of taking medicinal pills. He smiled at Li Ziming, then turned toward Li Xuanxuan and said, "Xuanxuan, we've talked enough for now. Why don't you rest for a bit? I'd like to speak with Minger alone." Li Xuanxuan was the highest in seniority within the Li family, so only the man before him could address him so casually. Stroking his white beard, he quickly took his leave. Zhao Yuanzi turned to the young man before him, coughed twice, and said with a smile, "Minger, come. Let's go talk at your Mount Wu." Li Ziming quickly moved to support him, but Zhao Yuanzi only chuckled and shook his head. Li Ziming felt nothing but gratitude for this elder. They descended together toward Mount Wu, landing atop its peak. Zhao Yuanzi looked around and said with a smile, You've always had the finest things. This Mount Wu is even better than my cave dwelling atop Mount Xianyu." Li Ziming nodded silently. The two of them sat down at a jade table, and Zhao Yuanzi spoke softly. "Your family has not been using the blood pool. Good, my efforts at Tangya weren't for nothing." Li Ziming just kept nodding. Zhao Yuanzi looked at him and continued, "In this lifetime, I've only ever taken you as a disciple. Everything I know of the alchemic Tao I've passed on to you. Minger, I know you, perhaps even better than Xuanxuan does. That's why I came." He said gently, "Ziming, if you plan to attempt the Purple Mansion realm, why didn't you tell your master first?" Li Ziming raised his head and saw the familiar smile on Zhao Yuanzi's face. He said, "Xuanxuan might have refused to give you the radiant sky stone. Don't blame him for that. Master, I wouldn't dare." Li Ziming stood up in alarm, but Zhao Yuanzi pulled him back into his seat, then took out a jade bottle from his sleeve and placed it in his hand with a smile. "Take a look." The bottle felt warm in his hand. Sweeping it with his spiritual sense, Li Ziming discovered a single brilliant pill inside, etched with 5 claw-like golden patterns. It was brimming with radiant light, and the entire jade bottle shimmered with concentrated golden brilliance. Li Ziming cultivated the bright Yang Dao and was well versed in alchemy. How could he not recognize it? This pill brimmed with intense bright Yang mana, with a pure and tranquil aura. Who knew how many bright Yang spirit items and treasured panaceas had gone into refining it? Maz, master. Li Ziming stood frozen in place. Zhao Yuanzi chuckled twice, then coughed and said softly, I've always known your ambition was great. I had started paying attention to bright Yang spirit items when you reached the Foundation Establishment realm. I thought I'd collect them gradually, but you advanced faster than I expected. I could barely keep up. Fortunately, I've built some connections over the years and have some knowledge of bright Yang spirit items. I secured 2 treasured panaceas, the bright sea lotus and the triple Yang radiant chi fruit. I rushed to the Eastern Sea and with much effort, finally gathered what I needed. Zhao Yuanzi continued gently, spirit items for the Purple Mansion realm are far too rare, and I don't have the means for that. But I do have some skill in alchemy. Though I lack a formula to aid in breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm, this is pure bright Yang origin. It's called the Radiant Violet Pill, and it should benefit you greatly. He looked at Li Ziming and said warmly, "It's a valuable item. I was afraid others might overhear, so I called you into the formation to talk. I kept this from my family's Taoist master and did it myself." He's off in the northern sea, so he won't interfere. You can use it without worry. Li Ziming couldn't meet Zhao Yuanxi's gaze. He could only reply, with all master has done. This disciple has no way to repay you. Repay. Zhao Yuanxi shook his head, a nostalgic look crossing his face. He laughed heartily for a few moments, then patted Li Ziming on the shoulder. The old man said no more, as if those few pats had conveyed all he wanted to express. Chapter 955, Treasured Armor I. Li Ziming's words stuck in his throat for a long time, while Zhao Yuanxi simply continued to look at him. The old man rested his hand on his shoulder and was lost in thought. Zhao Yuanxi understood clearly that once he left this place, and once Li Ziming entered seclusion, the next time he came to the Li family would almost certainly be for Li Ziming's funeral. Attaining divine abilities wasn't difficult for those in major sects, but for Li Ziming right now, it was not an ideal choice. To attain divine abilities is to transcend the mundane. When Li Ziming finally spoke through choked breaths, he sighed softly in his heart. He had exhausted every possible effort to see Li Ziming again. Zhao Yuanxi had noticed that his family's ancestor hadn't stopped him from gathering bright yang spirit items, but he didn't believe it meant genuine support from his family's Taoist master. He didn't trust him at all. He feared that Li Ziming would have already been forced into seclusion by the time the pill was finished. Zhao Shooting was exactly the kind of man who would do such a thing. So he had deliberately disrupted the timeline, even going so far as to injure himself just to finish the refinement early and personally deliver the pill. Zhao Yuanxi had treated this meeting as his final farewell. As for Li Ziming successfully reaching the Purple Mansion, he never truly dared hope for it. Minger's temperament is far too much like that of a mortal. Zhao Yuanxi gazed at him deeply and thought, those throughout history who have attained divine abilities were either pure-hearted and resolute, cunning and ruthless, or so introspective that even grief could not sway them. But Minger, when frightened he panics, when angered he lashes out. He speaks of the merciless Tao, yet is swayed by family and friends. In detachment, he can sever ties, but upon reflection, he feels pain and regret. When nothing stirs his heart, he hesitates. It is only when the pain becomes real does he realize what ruthlessness means. Of all the sons of the Li family, he is the most like an ordinary man. To forge a divine ability, one must pierce the Qi Sea and ascend through Yang. Endless illusions and countless inner demons will await along the way. What will he rely on to get through them? Zhao Yuanxi looked at him in silence. Li Ziming stood beside the table, exhaled softly, and finally spoke without words of thanks. Master, you deliberately kept this pill from Taoist Master Zhao. What concern lies behind that? Zhao Yuanxi hadn't expected that question. He slowly raised his brows and answered softly, my family's Taoist master is only doing what he believes is best for your family. I understand, said Ziming. Li Ziming stood quietly at his side and said softly, Taoist Master Zhao wishes for me to leave this pill for the... I can guess that and I can see it clearly. Master, rest assured, my family holds the Taoist master in the highest regard. We have not misunderstood his intentions. Zhao Yuanxi was not an ambitious man. With the Purple Mansion realm cultivator Zhao Shooting above him, he was content to spend his remaining years quietly refining pills. He had no reason to stop this disciple of his, and could only offer him this single pill as a parting gift. When he heard Li Ziming's words, he finally showed a trace of surprise. After a long silence, he said softly, you may handle what I've given you as you see fit. He coughed twice and finally rose to his feet. Li Ziming respectfully escorted him all the way out. Along the way, Zhao Yuanxi looked back at him 3 or 4 times, and to his own surprise, a faint glimmer of hope rose in his heart. If he can gather himself and cut his losses, that would be the best outcome. Li Ziming saw him off and then rode the wind back to Mount Wu. He did not inform Li Xuanxuan about the pill. Instead, he quietly sat down amid the mountain's drifting white mists. He took out the jade bottle, but didn't open it immediately. His spiritual sense pierced through the bottle and landed on the radiant violet pill within. The pill radiated a powerful bright yang qi. Its qi was pure and radiant. Li Ziming could detect no flaws within it, though my means of inspection are a joke compared to Zhao Shootings, and all Tao lineages stem from the Zhao family anyway, leaving little I can uncover. Master still made a point to mention Zhao Shooting. Li Ziming would never doubt Zhao Yuanxi, and Zhao Shooting had no reason to harm him either. Yet Zhao Yuanxi's earlier words clearly showed concern about Zhao Shooting. It wasn't hard for Li Ziming to arrive at this conclusion. It's just that Zhao Shooting would prefer Zhao Wei to be the one attempting to reach the Purple Mansion realm. He sat in silence amid the mist, thoughts drifting through his mind. Zhao Shooting's intentions are good. I suppose the profound Peak Gate and Kong Tingyan have passed on word as well. All eyes are now fixed on Zhao Wei. It's not just Xiao shooting. Every Purple Mansion realm cultivator friendly to my family hopes that Zhao Wei will be the one to challenge the Purple Mansion realm, not someone like me, whom they see as hopeless. The rest of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators, they're probably just waiting, eager to watch me fail. He gave a soft, self-deprecating laugh, then drew out a pale golden jade slip from his sleeve. Forming a hand seal, he activated his mana to begin cultivating the next secret technique, Jewel Steps. Kong Tingyan escorted them all the way to the lake, smiling as she saw the group off. Li Qinghang offered a few polite words of thanks, but since Kong Tingyan was in a hurry to return to her gate, she courteously declined the Li family's invitation and took her leave with a polite farewell. After hesitating several times, she tugged on Li Qinghang's sleeve before leaving and gave a reminder. Qinghang, you must pay close attention to what I mentioned earlier. Don't be careless. She was, of course, referring to Li Ziming. Li Qinghang could only nod in agreement. Only then did Kong Tingyan smile in relief and depart aboard her spirit boat. Back on the island, Li Qinglio came to greet them, grinning from ear to ear as he grabbed his eldest son's hand and examined him closely. Li Xiaowei hadn't seen his father in a long time. Though he was never one for sweet words, a rare trace of joy surfaced in his eyes. Chen Yang had changed into white robes and went to the lakeside to pay respects to his father. Li Xiaowei paid his respects to Li Zijian on the island. King Heng stood in silence by the grave, sighing. Once they returned to the main hall, the space suddenly felt empty. When the white ape saw Li Xiaowei, his expression faintly echoed the kindly one he once had in years past. His demeanor remained respectful, and he immediately bowed. The group entered the hall together, and Li Qinglio began recounting recent events. Senior Yuanci is truly a kind and gracious elder. He came all this way to offer his regards. Taoist Master Xiao has been in the Northern Sea for years now and hasn't appeared. Even his family hasn't been able to contact him, yet Xiao Yuanci still made a point to speak with Ziming. Li Xuanxuan was deeply grateful. He remembered clearly how many times Xiao Yuanci had lent a hand to support their family. He chimed in with a few more words, fearing the younger generation might bear resentment toward the Xiao family for not acting publicly on their behalf. Li Qinghang and the others, of course, wouldn't do such a thing. They all responded kindly and respectfully. Li Xuanxuan then waved his hand, and both the white ape and Li Qinglio took their leave. The great hall doors closed, and the protective formation began to hum softly. Still uneasy, Li Qinghang tossed out the Chang'eming Profound Insight screen from her sleeve. A screen of light enveloped the hall, adding another layer of protection. Only then did Li Xiaowei speak. How have the talisman seeds fared in the 2 years I've been away? Li Xuanxuan gently shook his head. Not as well as we'd hoped. We tested the celestial world generation 3 times, and only you showed this kind of celestial affinity. As for the Crimson Palace generation, the old man stroked his beard and continued softly. It's just now beginning to take shape. Jiangqian is barely 5, yet already the eldest among the first batch of the Crimson Palace generation. We'll let him give it a try. Li Xiaowei nodded. Talisman seeds had become increasingly rare in recent years, and the cultivation methods attached to them were even more advanced. Most generations now had only a single bearer. He had met several of his brothers. While their innate abilities were slightly better than those of the Radiant Lure generation, the difference wasn't substantial. Chapter 956, Treasured Armor, II. In the past, when the immortal mirror still manifested in the world, one could probe it with spiritual sense and clearly determine the number of talisman seeds inside. But the mirror hadn't appeared in decades. No one had seen it, and now one had to rely on incantations just to invoke it, let alone inspect talisman seeds directly. Li Xuanxuan seemed a little troubled by this and said quietly, using such treasures as vessels is all well and good, but there are already so few who bear the talismans. If something ever happens and the line is suddenly severed, with none of the younger generation having received a seed, wouldn't that mean we've lost the connection entirely? After mulling it over for a moment, he chose not to say more. Li Xiaowei then asked, "How is Jiangqian?" The moment this was brought up, Li Xuanxuan became visibly spirited and chuckled softly. "The child is bright and quick to learn. He's already earned great favor from your father." Li Xiaowei still remembered the exchange with Ding Jio in the Dragon Palace and pondered silently. If what Ding Jio implied is true, then both the eldest and second sons of Bright Yang are out of the ordinary. I've already seen what Jiangao is like, so Jiangqian must be remarkable as well. Ding Jio might not have been sincere with him, and his instructions might not reflect his true intentions, but the clues hidden in their conversation were still worth taking into account. So he asked, "Besides that, has there been anything unusual?" Li Xuanxuan paused briefly, then furrowed his brow. "He's just a 5-year-old child, it's hard to say much. His eyes are starting to show a hint of red within the gold, but that's nothing serious." "All right." Li Xiaowei nodded slightly, seeming to understand. He passed over the basket of pearls. Li Qinghang took out several jade slips, unfurling them one by one and saying softly, "Mingwang, these are the bright yang techniques and spell arts collected by the family. Take a look." Li Xiaowei relaxed his brow and picked up the jade slips from the table, reading through them one by one. Second-grade technique, clarity of sight and heart technique, immortal foundation, bright and clear heart. Third-grade escape spell, flowing sun refraction. Third-grade technique, bright origin observation and separation technique, immortal foundation, everbright platform. Fourth-grade spell art, heavenly radiance, hidden light. Li Xiaowei gave a word of thanks, then put away flowing sun refraction and heavenly radiance, hidden light. He skimmed through bright origin observation and separation technique and handed it back to Li Qinghang, saying softly, "I've troubled the seniors. Don't mention it." Li Qinghang gave a gentle nod and exchanged a glance with Li Xuanxuan before saying softly, "Mingwang, there is one more matter." She rose from her seat and walked across the hall, forming a hand seal to resonate with the formation. She then retrieved a brocade pouch from within. Standing before them, she gently shook it and drew a large jade box from it. The jade box was as large as a tabletop and didn't seem particularly extraordinary in material. Guided by mana, it floated lightly to the ground. Li Xiaowei made a rough guess in his heart, and sure enough, Li Qinghang said, "Years ago, my second uncle shot down Murong Wu and took a profound iron treasure armor from him. It's a top-tier Foundation establishment realm armor. It was then brought back and reforged over nearly 3 months using True Flame atop Mount Bianyan. Once it was completed, Ning Heiyuan delivered it to my second uncle, who had it quietly returned and stored away here. It has remained unopened ever since." Mana flowed along her slender fingers as she tapped the jade box 9 times. The box opened on its own with a metallic clang, revealing the treasure within. Li Xiaowei focused and saw a gleaming field of gold-white fine scales. There were no intricate patterns, just layer upon layer of overlapping plates with a supple texture. It was a suit of soft armor. He lifted it gently, surprise written across his face. Li Qinghang praised it. "I'd heard Murong Wu use the Desert Profound armor, which was thought to be a heavy armor steeped in demonic aura. I expected it to be a clunky plate armor. Who'd have thought, after 81 days of True Flame refinement, it would become this?" Li Xuanxuan looked at the soft armor with nostalgic eyes and said in his hoarse voice, "The Murong family hails from the northern tribes. Their armor is naturally forged to be fierce and bulky, with 3 pounds of iron made to look like 9. The Azure Pond sect, for all its differences, is still a Dao lineage of the immortal Dao, so of course they refine things toward elegance and grace. The old man had managed stores for many years and was no stranger to such things. After studying it for a moment, he said calmly, "Most likely the original Desert Profound armor was far too unwieldy, so they had no choice but to reforge it into soft armor. Otherwise, by the Azure Pond sect's standards, they'd have tried turning it into a feathered robe." Li Xiaowei admired it for a while and was clearly pleased. He called out, and the white armor rose on its own to wrap itself properly around his body. Tall and broad-shouldered, he stood proud, clad in white gold battle gear, gleaming with radiant light. As his golden eyes swept the room, he truly looked like a direct heir of an immortal family. Only then did Li Qinghang speak gently. "This armor uses Desert Profound Sky Iron and Radiant Origin Stone for its core, with Wolfskull Bone and Crimson White Feather for the scales. Forged under True Flame by several high-level artifact smiths from the Azure Pond sect, it is named Yuan." Li Xiaowei nodded gently. Li Xuanxuan, slightly surprised, asked, "Have you already refined it?" Everyone knew that Dharma artifacts required refining before use. They had to be saturated with mana. It wasn't too difficult for Qi Cultivation Realm artifacts, and Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma artifacts already took significant time. Masterless ones were easier and often required days. If it was already bound to a previous owner, they took much longer. Some ancient technique artifacts like the Chang'eming Profound Insight Screen could take months, yet Li Xiaowei wielded the armor as if it were already his. Li Xuanxuan couldn't help but ask in puzzlement. Li Xiaowei replied with a smile, "I haven't refined it. But things of bright yang nature naturally favor me. I can use them as I please even without refining them." As he spoke, the Dusheng halberd manifested in his hand, radiating a bright, arcing glow. When its tip gently touched the floor, Li Qingheng smiled and said, "Go ahead and test your hand. Have the white ape exchange a few moves with you." Li Xiaowei smiled and nodded but said, "I'm afraid that won't be enough." Li Xuanxuan let out a rare hearty laugh, while Li Qingheng withdrew the Chongming Profound Insight screen, pushed open the palace doors, and stepped outside into the brisk morning wind. The creaking wooden clogs gave away the narrow-eyed monk's stride. Li Qingheng asked softly, "How about King Heng?" That drew King Heng's attention. He looked at the group, puzzled. Li Xuanxuan, whose memory of the monk still lingered in the distant past, smiled and nodded. "He seems quite good to me." Li Qingheng, however, was more hesitant. King Heng was no longer the man he used to be. A master monk's lifespan was no short matter, and cultivation under ancient Buddhist methods progressed slowly. Though he was never flashy, years of tempered cultivation had made him someone not easily underestimated. Even if his strength lies in defense rather than offense, he would still stand a strong chance against cultivators from the 3 sects and 7 gates. Not wanting to dampen Li Xiaowei's spirit, she turned and asked King Heng directly, "May I ask, Master Monk, how would you rate your current strength?" King Heng paused in thought before giving a wry smile. "I doubt I could withstand your thunder arts, but I can still manage against other things." Li Qingheng was confident in her own strength. Amplified by several Dharma artifacts, her thunder arts were powerful enough to rival Tang Shedu of old. That meant King Heng had reached the level of a peak master in the Azure Pond sect. Before she could say anything further, the monk smiled and added, "If I'm on the defensive, even a late-stage Foundation Establishment realm cultivator would have trouble killing me, but if I take the offensive, my strength would drop significantly. I'd say I'm around the mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment realm." He was, of course, comparing himself to direct descendants of the 3 sects and 7 gates. Li Qingheng quickly made her assessment and thought, slightly weaker than Zijai, roughly on par with Ximing. She said gently, "Master Monk, why not test the air's strength? Just a light spar will do." "Very well," replied King Heng. Chapter 957, Planning for What Comes After I. The heavy rain over Lake Xian had just ended. The skies had cleared, and Li Qingheng stood atop the lake, riding thunder. This part of the water was completely empty, with no trace of people. Li Xuanxuan and the white ape stood beside her. Moongay's lake was crowded with people and too conspicuous for a fight, so the group naturally wouldn't make a scene there. Instead, they found a random spot on Lake Xian to land. This was the quietest location in the inland region, with only 2 lake-dwelling demonic creatures passing by on patrol. When they saw several Foundation Establishment realm cultivators, they didn't dare interfere and pretended not to see them as they slipped away across the water. 2 small boats passed by in the distance, manned by disciples of the Kong family. They circled around, spotted Li Qingheng from afar, recognized her, offered a distant bow, and continued on their way. Li Xiaowei raised his hand with his palm facing up. A surge of blazing radiant light burst from his palm, forming 2 armored soldiers by his side. Their white-scaled armor shimmered under the sunlight, with matching silver boots. Their faces bore neither helmets nor features, just a blank expanse of pale light. Both wielded spears and carried bows on their backs, exuding an imposing presence. As for Li Xiaowei himself, he held a halberd across his body. Radiant light gathered at the arc in the center of the weapon, where 2 halberd blades joined to form a razor-sharp edge that gleamed menacingly. King Heng pressed his palms together before his chest, his narrow eyes squinting nearly shut. He chanted softly, and pale golden runes flew from his crimson lips and white teeth and started to circle him. Li Xiaowei flipped his halberd upward. The radiant light at its center rippled, releasing an invisible, colorless glow that instantly covered a section of the lake. White steam hissed up from the surface. Across from him, King Heng fared better. He merely felt the blinding light crash against his face like fire, which made it hard to lift his gaze. But as a Buddhist cultivator, he wasn't afraid of such forces and was not greatly affected. But the sudden heat was harsh on the lurking demonic creatures nearby. They began sweating profusely and grew restless. After exchanging glances, most of them lost their curiosity and quietly dispersed. Sheng, but Li Xiaowei didn't stop there. With a command, a stream of flame shot out from the arc and draped over his body. Radiant light rolled across his armor and fire spiraled beneath his feet. Bang! A sonic boom erupted over the lake. An instant later, the long halberd was already upon King Heng. The monk finally opened his eyes a little and suddenly parted his palms, sending forth a burst of golden runes. The golden runes transformed into chains in midair, clinking noisily as they wrapped around Sheng like serpents. Li Xiaowei flexed his forearm, and his halberd shuddered violently, breaking most of them apart. King Heng's hand seal changed in an instant, and his eyes opened slightly wider. The golden light behind him condensed into a large orb. Then, a massive figure emerged with a thunderous boom. A golden upper body took shape, 6 arms spreading wide through the air, covered in dense golden script. Its golden face, marked with 2 broad horizontal lines, glowed with red light and radiated immense authority. A towering 6-armed Vajra in golden armor rose upright from the golden light. Decree. The Vajra's eyes widened, and all 6 of its arms tugged on the golden chains in unison. A heavy metallic clatter rang out as every chain tightened at once, bursting forth in a dazzling flash of golden light. The golden-armored Vajra was as large as a temple. Its eyes were as wide as windmills, casting a massive shadow over Lake Xi'an. In front of it, Li Xiaowei looked like a small colt tethered outside a gate. His Dharma artifact was yanked taut in an instant. King Heng had struck with his full strength, using Buddhist cultivator secret techniques. Li Qinghang and the others all nodded in approval. Li Xuanxuan stroked his beard, lifting his white brows in mild surprise. He turned and said with a smile, "A monk cultivates the heart and is free from worldly affairs. When he strikes, he does so with everything and holds nothing back." King Heng wasn't the type to joke around or show favoritism. This strike alone would have disarmed most Foundation Establishment realm cultivators. Dense golden chains wrapped tightly around Da Sheng, making Li Xiaowei feel a sudden heaviness in his hands. Without a moment's hesitation, he opened his mouth and spat out a beam of white light. The white light shot upward like a white rainbow, not toward King Heng himself, but directly at the golden-armored Vajra behind him. It was the Radiant Origin Pass. A white pass formed in the air, dispersing the golden glow in an instant. The Radiant Origin Pass excelled in suppression, and was especially effective against incorporeal spell arts. The Vajra was suppressed into a blur in a flash. King Heng nodded slightly when his opponent seized the chance to retrieve his Dharma artifact. In theory, using the Radiant Origin Pass to suppress the opponent directly was the best strategy. Like Li Ziming had demonstrated, once the enemy was pinned down, casting spells and chanting incantations became difficult, while draining their mana and gaining the upper hand became easier over time. But using an immortal foundation to suppress the opponent's spell arts might seem like a waste, since too much mana expended with each rise and fall, while the opponent could simply dismiss the spell and cast anew. But Li Xiaowei was facing King Heng. King Heng's cultivation excels in defense, and he far surpasses me in level. If I were to use an immortal foundation to suppress him directly, I'd be meeting strength with strength and weakness with weakness. Even if I manage to save myself this time, next time I'll be bound by those golden chains, thought Li Xiaowei. He had instantly capitalized on his opponent's lack of offensive power and used his immortal foundation to grind down King Heng's spell arts, rendering them ineffective and preserving his own safety. As for the mana cost, if I can shift this duel into a contest of mana, then that's a win in itself. The Radiant Origin Pass shimmered for a moment and shattered the phantom in the air into golden light. King Heng flicked his sleeve, scattering the charging armored soldiers, and said lightly, "Come." A bronze monk's staff appeared in his hand. He lifted it into the air and slammed it down with tremendous force. Li Xiaowei raised his brow and brought his long halberd up to meet it. Clang. Li Xiaowei wielded an ancient Dharma artifact from a grotto heaven, while King Heng's weapon was a guardian treasure he had cultivated with since his mortal days. Though it had been refined for many years and was extremely durable, it still couldn't compare to such a treasure. The sharp tips on the arc of the halberd gleamed and let out a metallic snap as they hooked into the arched head of the monk's staff. Li Xiaowei had been waiting for this moment. He twisted the halberd, unleashing a burst of radiant light flame. The monk's staff was firmly caught by the halberd's hook and couldn't break free, taking the full brunt of the radiant light flame. It crackled loudly as it sizzled, still hanging on the halberd and unable to detach. Flame washed across King Heng's face, forcing him to retreat a step and laugh. Good. His bronze monk's staff suddenly twisted, writhing like a snake before slipping free from the halberd's hook. Li Xiaowei, knowing this move wouldn't finish the monk, followed through with a thrust. Chapter 958, Planning for What Comes After. Aye. With a shout, King Heng flung away Li Xiaowei's Dharma artifact. He clapped his palms together before his chest and let out a low cry, forcibly halting the halberd's momentum. He caught a Foundation Establishment realm Dharma artifact with his bare body. A flicker of astonishment appeared in Li Xiaowei's eyes. He knew the monk's physical strength was formidable, but he hadn't expected him to be this strong. With a thought, radiant light burst forth from Da Sheng. Cough, cough. King Heng had barely received the blow, but his palms were now scorched and seared from the heat. He quickly let go of the artifact. allowing the blazing, radiant light to slam into him. He scrambled away in a rather disheveled state. He ducked forward, lowered his gaze, and flung out a sleeve of golden runes in the same motion. Before the runes could fully form in midair, the long, watchful, radiant origin pass came crashing down from the sky, yet King Heng remained unfazed. The air has only just broken through. His control over his immortal foundation must still be unrefined. The radiant origin pass is no ordinary spell, but a projection of the immortal foundation itself. Each rise and fall stirs tremendous fluctuations in internal mana, thought King Heng. As Li Xiaowei activated his immortal foundation, King Heng's eyes abruptly flared with golden light. He pressed his palms together and exhaled sharply. Ha! The cry tore through the air like bamboo splitting or silk tearing, shaking the lake's surface into waves. King Heng had been a master monk for many years, and this shout struck precisely just as Li Xiaowei's mana flow turned. The immortal foundation trembled, and Li Xiaowei's face flushed red as he nearly spat out blood. King Heng immediately made his move. When the radiant origin pass trembled, not only did a stream of golden runes shoot forth, but the golden figure it had nearly worn down rose again. It reached out with 6 arms and released a cascade of golden chains into the sky. Li Xiaowei immediately quelled his internal turbulence, but his opponent had already taken the initiative. Gold light flickered in his eyes, while King Heng's expression remained firm and unwavering. It had to be said, aside from his lack of offensive techniques, King Heng had nearly no weaknesses. Even under the terrifying pressure of Li Xiaowei's Great Fisher Golden Eye, which enhanced his perception technique to a fearsome level, King Heng was unaffected. The radiant light's power to dispel and suppress misfortune had little impact on his Buddhist radiance. I've yet to complete heavenly radiance, hidden light. Otherwise, I wouldn't be this helpless. Li Xiaowei exhaled deeply as he was forced to retreat, but given that his strength was already far inferior, this retreat placed him squarely in the monk's tempo. King Heng's golden chains swayed in the air, while the cluster of golden runes transformed into a small golden wooden fish to resist the radiant origin pass. The radiant origin pass couldn't be dealt with by a mere spell, but if the Li family knew King Heng well, could King Heng not know the Li family just as well? No matter how many wooden fish were crushed beneath its weight, each rise of the pass triggered another wave of Buddhist resonance, reinforced by golden chains that forced him back into confinement. King Heng conducted himself with the utmost seriousness. Even with the clear advantage, he showed no openings. He cautiously tightened the golden chains little by little. After nearly 100 exchanges, King Heng finally ceased chanting, and Li Xiaowei planted his halberd to the ground and stopped. The reason was simple. If the fight continued, it would become a duel to the death. Though the golden chains couldn't kill Li Xiaowei, escaping them would still cost him vital qi. This was just a sparring match, so there was no need to go that far. Li Xiaowei handed the halberd to one of his armored soldiers. He had advanced smoothly throughout the battle. After a long moment of reflection, he nodded and said, "I've gained much from this exchange." King Heng gave a bitter smile and shook his head, only now realizing he had been a bit too harsh. He said softly, "A monk bullying the young with strength. It's hardly justifiable." Little did anyone know, but Li Xuanxuan had been watching with great delight. After all, Li Xiaowei had managed to break through King Heng's defenses once. If it had been any other Foundation establishment realm cultivator, they would have had quite the headache. Fortunately, it was King Heng he had faced. The old man chuckled and said, "Good, very good." Li Qinghang had been smiling gently the whole time and said little. The group rode the wind back to the shore, and only then did she speak softly. "Xiaowei, though your cultivation is still shallow, your strength is beginning to show its edge. From now on, I'll entrust the lake to you and I can rest a little easier." Li Xiaowei appeared to realize something and nodded heavily. He waved his hand, dismissing King Heng, the white ape, and the others. Li Qinghang patted him lightly and said with a smile, "Don't forget, Yuan hasn't been refined yet, you're only wearing it. Once it's fully refined, your strength will grow even more." Li Xiaowei nodded naturally. Li Qinghang continued in a gentle voice, "Our family has given what it can to aid you armor, halberd techniques, spell arts, spirit pills. We've done our best. Just by being born into this family, we can't offer you anything better." Li Xiaowei was sharp. He sensed something strange in her tone and said gravely, "Please be at ease. I've only ever felt overwhelmed by the abundance, never its lack. Mingwang holds the house oath and all its strictures close and would never dare violate them." Li Qinghang let out a soft sigh. It was as if she relaxed, though there was a trace of lament in her breath. She said quietly, "I know, but there's one matter I must speak with you about." She paused, then spoke warmly. Our family's minor sect, when dealing with those of different surnames, has always supported anyone with sufficient innate ability with spirit resources. Chen Yang, who had the highest innate ability, was even granted the Qingdu treatment. I once discussed with my brother that if someone shows the potential for the Foundation establishment realm, our family will ensure they receive the necessary cultivation methods. But those early families who followed us, like the families of Lijing, though now grand households, were originally farmers. Ultimately, they rarely had the potential for Foundation establishment realm, so those cultivation methods have simply sat unused. She glanced at the lakeshore and said softly, "Now that the lakefront has been unified, and the various families serve under our banner, people like Nsiwei and Chen Yang show promise of reaching the Foundation establishment realm. They must be given the chance. Don't let family prejudice cloud your judgment. If they succeed in reaching the Foundation establishment realm and are willing to take on a post under our house, let them stay. If not and they seek better prospects elsewhere, then let them go with this bond of goodwill and let them take their families along." These words left Li Xiaowei silent. Compared to the Azure Pond sect, their family had little allure for Foundation establishment realm cultivators. Without true emotional ties, wouldn't these people be happier choosing their own place to cultivate and establish their own house, rather than living under someone else's roof? Only the old man at the side furrowed his brow upon hearing this and said softly, "Qingheng, what are you?" Li Qingheng spoke softly, "Our household has little need for extra hands right now. It's best to advise any cultivator who breaks through to the Foundation establishment realm to go their own way. If they remain here by the lake, I fear they'll fall prey to schemes from the Purple Mansion realm cultivators. Our family has done right by them. As for techniques, so long as one has enough innate ability and access to spiritual qi, everything except our core secret techniques has been open for study. Spirit resources and items have been distributed annually by every peak and branch. Those with higher innate ability receive additional support and even the opportunity to cultivate on the island. Whenever there's danger, our own kin were the first to step forward. The other houses respect us for this, and this is the bond we share. But those are things we can afford to give. Once they reach the Foundation establishment realm, however, they will need certain resources that our ancestors risked their lives to obtain, or I did myself. I can only give them to my family. We can no longer afford to give to others, and if we withhold those things, resentment will grow. That would only ruin the goodwill we've built." The woman said gently, "What I mean is, our family must prioritize the Purple Mansion realm above all. We must avoid creating side troubles. Once provoked, a Purple Mansion realm cultivator's divine ability can stir countless consequences. It's better to advise them to leave first and preserve our bond. Why risk everything for just one or two Foundation establishment realm cultivators?" Li Xiaowei finally nodded and said softly, "I understand. So long as our family has no Purple Mansion realm cultivator of its own, if those of other surnames or minor sects reach the Foundation establishment realm, we should first urge them to take their families elsewhere." Li Qingheng smiled at him, then turned to gaze over the lake. At her side, Li Xuanxuan said nothing. After a long silence, she turned and said, "Uncle, take care of your health." Chapter 959, Secrets I, Pingya Island. Sunlight poured into the grand hall, where Li Xiaowei sat in the main seat holding a jade slip. The light brushed over each lacquered red pillar before spilling across the wide expanse of the hall. After returning from the lake, Li Qingheng retreated into seclusion as she awaited the arrival of Zai Ziking. Li Qingliao also entered closed-door cultivation to polish his realm in preparation for the Foundation establishment realm. And so, authority returned once more to Li Xiaowei's hands. Li Xiaowei didn't mind the trouble. Advancing too rapidly in secluded cultivation would only arouse suspicion. Instead, he decided to focus on refining his spell arts and tempering his current cultivation while still keeping an eye on household affairs. His hand rested on the desk. Radiance flowed across the pale golden jade slip as several small characters appeared: heavenly radiance, hidden light. Since Zai Ziking had yet to enter a grotto heaven, the other escape spell flowing sun refraction was temporarily inaccessible. Over the past year, other than sending people into the mountains to contact White Banyan Fox, Li Xiaowei had focused on this technique and made some progress. His spiritual sense sank into his body. A speck of radiant light, no bigger than a bean, flickered gently within the hazy juke acupoint, continuously absorbing his inner mana, yet there was no obvious sign of anything profound. Even so, Li Xiaowei slowly straightened, eyes downcast as he gazed at the jade slip, rubbing it lightly while pondering in silence. It was simply because this was the first time the Li family had seen or had even heard of a spell art being cultivated within the Juk acupoint. What's more, this heavenly radiance, hidden light was said to be compressed there, then rise to the center of the brows and be released to strike the enemy. It was utterly unheard of. It's commonly said that the foundation establishment realm takes place in the Qi Si, with the Shenyang mansions signifying the awakening of divine ability. But what even is the Juk acupoint? And besides, if one never forms a purple mansion Dao, only the Qi Si among the three apertures is visible. The Juk acupoint seems entirely redundant in the purple mansion golden core Dao, thought Li Xiaowei. He could tell that the spell art's circulation path was completely different from what he'd seen. All he could deduce was that it must be incredibly ancient, and perhaps even predate the purple mansion golden core Dao. With that, he began to form a few expectations. If casting this spell is so complex, it likely can't be released in an instant. It requires absolute calm and focus. Truly, it bears the style of the ancient times. Just as he was thinking this, someone stepped briskly into the hall. Clad in armor, Chen Yang half knelt at the front, his voice low and firm, reporting, "My lord, the unrest at eastern Mount Yue has been settled. Li Jimin has come to pay respects and is now waiting outside the hall." A full year had passed since the events at the lake. All had remained peaceful, except for the unrest in eastern Mount Yue, where Li Jimin's son had failed in an attempt to poison him and then fled the city, stirring up significant chaos. Li Xiaowei had sent Chen Yang over, who descended from the sky and took the prince's head. After that, Li Jimin slunk over in shame. Now the Mount Yue man knelt before the hall doors, cold sweat streaming down his aged face. In truth, eastern Mount Yue was now no different from the Easterners. They were well-dressed and refined. Yet Li Jimin's hair crown had tilted askew, and its tip was scraping the floor. Li Xiaowei glanced over, and the old man cried out in distress, "Your humble servant greets, the grand conquered of radiance." That was how the Mount Yue people had always addressed him, and Li Xiaowei paid it no mind. He continued reading the jade slip, waiting for the man to plead his case. Li Jimin's current position was deeply awkward. He had been placed on the throne by Li Yuanping and thus belonged to the first lineage, yet power had shifted into the hands of the second lineage. Though Li Zicheng and Li Qingliu bore no sectarian bias, that origin remained an indelible mark on him. He had always kept a low profile. Who would have thought that his rebellious son, crown prince for 40 years, could no longer hold back? The prince had first urged him to attempt the foundation establishment realm, and then, failing that, conspired with outsiders to poison him. Now kneeling beneath the hall, he could not voice his grievances. He rambled on for some time until Li Xiaowei responded casually, "Eastern Mount Yue isn't large. Keep a better eye on it. If it proves too much for you, the island will send someone to take over." Li Jimin could only slam his head into the ground. Chen Yang escorted him away, then returned to the hall and spoke quietly, "Your Highness, that crown prince was so reckless. Might there be some injustice here? Could it have been Dili Yaoji? Eastern and northern Mount Yue had long been at odds." It wasn't surprising that Chen Yang suspected as much. Li Xiaowei set the jade slip aside and answered, "Even if there's injustice, it still shows Li Jimin's incompetence. He's old and can't even control his own son. Dili Yaoji, after all, has been with me through life and death. He wouldn't do something so foolish at a time like this." He rose from the desk and said quietly, "It's common for the various houses and factions within the family to engage in open and hidden strife. Li Jimin and Dili Yaoji refused to pick a side, so naturally, someone would want to switch out the Mount Yue king. But once the game of removing and installing starts, next time they won't just be settling scores with Li Jimin. There's no need to dwell on such matters." He walked casually to the front of the hall and pulled a letter from his sleeve. It was an entire page packed with dense handwriting. It detailed a series of recent developments in the Azure Pond sect. The Azure Pond sect had seen earth-shaking changes over the past. Kai Zuxiao had fully empowered the Kai Fubo faction, whose influence now reigned supreme within the sect. Si Yuanli had secluded himself, and the Si family faction had collapsed, with barely anyone left in any position of power. Even the deeply rooted Lingu family had lost several posts in the southern sea. Li Zijai had been missing for a year. Ning Hijing was making sweeping moves in the eastern sea, and there were even rumors that Li Zijai had been eliminated by the Kai family. The letter concluded by stating that the Azure Pond sect's emissaries had already arrived at Moongaze Lake bearing rewards. Li Xiaowei couldn't help but chuckle and shake his head. He thought, the Azure Pond sect really has been chaotic. The reward for the North-South struggle was delayed 5 whole years, and they only brought it up now. All the other families had received their rewards years ago. yet only the Li and Lingu families had been told. The merit is too great and must be discussed further. That discussion had dragged on for 5 years. He calculated the date. It should be today. After a short wait, Siwei stepped forward and respectfully reported, "Your Highness, envoys from the Azure Pond sect have arrived. Let's go greet them," replied Li Xiaowei. He stepped out with the other two following behind as they headed toward the outer court. The Azure Pond sect hadn't sent their Heavenly Glow Dawn cloudliner, but a spirit boat instead. 2 men stood at the bow, both wearing amiable expressions. When they saw Li Xiaowei approach, they descended from the boat and gave a formal bow. The leader radiated boldness in his blue and white robe. His gaze was warm and his tone polite as he said, "I am Li Quantao. Greetings to the family head." Kai Fubo was clearly no petty fool. Since this reward was meant to show favor, there would be no underhanded tricks. In fact, the one overseeing it was none other than Li Yancheng's son, Li Quantao. Li Xiaowei had heard of his name and knew the man before him was of good standing. He replied softly, "Please, emissary this way." Li Quantao seemed to be doing well these days. He looked more mature, carried himself with poise, and the people behind him treated him with great respect. Kai Fubo only had a few truly capable people under him, so he reinstated many once-overlooked talents within the sect. Since Li Quantao's faction had offended Kai Wei, Kai Fubo paid it no mind and swiftly promoted him. Now Li Quantao held no small status. Chapter 960, Secrets II. He let out a hearty laugh and entered the hall alongside them. Once seated, his expression turned solemn and he said, "We're both of Wei's Li family, so let's get straight to the matter." True to his bold and generous style, he waved his sleeve, and a subordinate hurriedly brought a large box, cradling it from beneath with both hands. Once it was infused with mana, the jade box opened on its own. Whoosh! A wave of pill fragrance surged forth as 5 essence-gathering pills, nestled in the grooves, came into view. The pills had a gray hue with swirling patterns, and were emitting glimmers of light. Behind them, Siwei quickly lowered his head and did not dare to look further. There were also 2 smaller jade boxes and a longer rectangular one inside. Li Quantao opened them one by one and explained gently, "No need to say much about the essence-gathering pills. All 5 are potent and highly beneficial for the Foundation establishment. As for the other 2 boxes, one contains a rare thunder-attributed treasured panacea, Thunderheart Core, and the other holds a 9-stamen spirit daylily." He picked up and opened one of the boxes. Inside lay a pale, faintly pulsating purple organ, shaped like a heart and lung fused together and crisscrossed with black veins. It was nested between layered petals. Li Quantao chuckled and said, "This item is easy to preserve, but it must never be opened during a thunderstorm. If it leaves the box and encounters lightning and rain, it will turn into lightning and flee. Its essence will scatter, and not even a purple mansion realm cultivator can retrieve it. It's highly beneficial for thunder cultivators. It's meant as a gift for Senior King Hong." He closed the box with a flick of his hand and stored it away. The second jade box he didn't open, but introduced it through the lid. "This is the 9-stamen spirit daylily. It can treat fractured foundations, congenital deficiencies, unstable cultivation, and an unsteady immortal foundation. But it cannot be exposed to light, since it will wither upon contact." Kai Fubo was being rather generous. Both of these treasured panaceas were rare and valuable. Li Quantao placed them back into the larger box, then reached for the longer jade box, flipped it open, and said, "This is a shadow bloom branch of the bone tree, a rare veiled yin dharma artifact." He lifted his brows and glanced at Li Xiaowei, letting out a deep sigh before saying softly, "The sect master originally approved a bright yang dharma artifact, but Lord Ning blocked it with repeated petitions. The matter was delayed again and again, until that artifact couldn't be retrieved. So it was replaced with this one." "I see." Li Xiaowei nodded and looked into the jade box. He saw a pristine and gleaming jade branch the length of a forearm. It was half bone and half jade. Several black leaves dangled sparsely from its forked ends, shrouded in a faint aura of yin. "Shadow bloom branch of the bone tree, what an awful name, but it does look rather nice," thought Li Xiaowei. After examining it, Li Xiaowei smiled. "You're too courteous, emissary. Whatever the sect bestows is already more than enough. There's no need to trouble the sect master. My household gratefully accepts this gesture." This Dharma artifact was certainly useless to Li Xiaowei, not just to him, but likely to most cultivators. It would probably only shine in the hands of those from the Women's Nation or the Chunyi Dao Gate. Still, he couldn't help but feel that Ning Hijing's interference made no sense at all. "I don't know what madness seized Ning Hijing. This item is a treasure for the Chunyi Dao Gate. If it's useless to my household, can't I just exchange it?" thought Li Xiaowei. As Nsiwei took the jade box, Li Xiaowei noticed lingering regret on Li Quantao's face. His mind turned quickly. Ning Hijing, as a regional governor, likely isn't that stupid. He probably just advised Kai Zuxiao against giving us a bright yang artifact, fearing our rise. Looks like someone's been stirring the pot, trying to make my family resent Ning Hijing. To Li Quantao, the youth before him seemed somewhat imperious, albeit courteous in speech. He had no idea just how much had already crossed the youth's mind. Once they reached the hall and dismissed the others, worry finally surfaced on his face. Li Quantao spoke in a low voice. "Family head, have you heard any word of Zijai? He and I are like brothers. He's been missing for some time now, and the abyss has changed drastically. His soul lamp in the sect is dangerously dim. I'm deeply worried." His face was etched with sincere anxiety. Li Xiaowei shook his head and said gently, "Even the upper sect has no news. How could my family possibly know?" Li Quantao could only sit back down, brow tightly furrowed, unable to ease his worries. He muttered, "Your esteemed family may not realize how serious this is. The abyss is filled with radiant essence and lesser yang light, both dazzling and spiritually corrosive. A single year inside could be fatal." Li Xiaowei appeared thoughtful and squinted slightly. He raised his head, showing a hint of unease, but his heart was pounding. The family's jade talisman for Li Zijai had shown no change at all. It still shone as brightly as ever. Is the talisman simply imprecise, or is this a ploy to deceive me? Li Quantao had gone through life and death with Li Zijai. Li Xiaowei didn't think he'd collude with the Azure Pond sect to deceive him, but tricking Li Quantao was hardly difficult. Stirring true feelings with false information was a classic and simple scheme. Li Xiaowei's silence made Li Quantao think he was being swayed. He leaned in and said softly, "Zijai was close with Lord C. That senior even died following his orders. Ask him, there must be some response. He's in constant seclusion and sees no one. I haven't been able to reach him, or I'd have asked myself." Li Xiaowei feigned sudden realization and said with delight, "Very well, I'll write a letter immediately." But inside he chuckled coldly and thought, so that's the angle. Ask Si Yuanli. He was merely in the Foundation establishment realm. How could he possibly know what's happening in the distant abyss? The real aim was to contact Si Boxu. Si Yuanli had feigned weakness for so long, and now that his influence was gone, Kai Fubo was beginning to suspect that it was actually Si Boxu in seclusion who was using Si Yuanli as his proxy in secret. If Si Yuanli truly had the support of a Taoist master Yuan Ziu, then even if the letter lacked concrete updates on Li Zijai, it would still hint that he was safe. That alone would be enough to stop the Li family from despairing. If Li Quantao relaxed even a little, Kai Fubo would have confirmation. Li Xiaowei merely displayed a solemn expression, clasped his hands to Li Quantao and said gravely, "You shared life and death ties with my elders. I trust you. I'll write the letter, but you mustn't let anyone know. If there's a reply, have it sent discreetly and don't let anyone else hear of it. Something might go wrong." He added fuel to the fire, and Li Quantao nodded repeatedly, swearing several oaths. Li Xiaowei knew he meant well, but since Kai Fubo had orchestrated this test, he surely had ways of monitoring their exchange. In the end, it was just a matter of belief or disbelief. Since he could settle that matter, Li Quantao finally breathed a sigh of relief. He took his leave soon after, riding the clouds with his companions. Li Xiaowei escorted them to the lake and watched them vanish into the distance. He returned on radiant light, landed in the great hall, pulled out a sheet of paper and tossed it aside casually. Write to Si Yuanli. With such blatant correspondence, even if Si Yuanli dared speak, Kai Fubo would never believe him. Li Xiaowei had never intended to send that letter. News that arrives through unofficial, roundabout channels. That's what will make it seem like a secret exchange between the Li and Si families. He calculated the timeline. He could reply to Li Quantao in a month, but to send a letter openly to the sect, how could that win Kai Fubo's trust? Li Yancheng and Li Yingxi are both dead now, so the original channel is cut, muttered Li Xiaowei. Li Xiaowei pondered for a moment, then brushed the formation on his desk. After a moment, a young man entered, dressed in robes of blue outside and white within. It was Li Chenghui. Li Xiaowei spoke in a whisper. "The Deng family once left us a covert way to communicate. Is that shop still traceable? Uncle, please make a trip to the market, get in touch with their people, and help me send a letter into the sect." Li Chenghui didn't ask a thing. He simply nodded and left. Li Xiaowei twirled the jade slip in his fingers, gazing silently at the radiant jade box under the sunlight as he thought. To the clever, the more secretly a message is heard, the more believable it becomes. To deal with the wise, act foolish. To deal with the foolish, act wise. That's all there is to it.